Today is Monday, March 25th, 2024, and this is a meeting of the Senior Center Site Selection and Building Committee. This meeting will be held in person at the location provided on this notice. Members of the public are welcome to attend this in-person meeting. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and/or participation via Zoom is being provided as a courtesy to the public, the meeting or hearing will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast, unless otherwise required by law. Members of the public with particular interest in a specific item on this agenda should make plans for in-person versus virtual attendance accordingly. This meeting will be live on Zoom. The public may access the proceedings by joining Zoom meeting ID 852-5823-2163 or by calling 929-205-6099. For additional information about remote participation, please contact Carly Antonellis, Assistant Town Manager, at atm@ayer.ma.us or 978-772-8220, extension 100, prior to the meeting. So welcome everyone, and welcome to our first architectural firm. Can I first get a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda as written.
Okay, second. Seconded by Ellen. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great, wonderful. And so committee member Dave Grubb is joining us via Zoom tonight, and Robert expressed his condolences. He couldn't make it this evening, last minute change of plans. So Dennis will be our note taker for the evening. Thank you, Dennis, for doing that.
Good stuff.
Alrighty. So with that, I think we can just a couple of housekeeping notes and then go right on into the interviews. Committee, you should have 3 copies of the interview questions, one for each firm. As well as I just received today Ellen's reference checks, her summary of the reference checks. So thank you, Ellen, for doing that. This is great. For any members of the public, watching these 2 documents will be posted after the meeting to the website under our committee. Alrighty. Any questions from the committee before we welcome the first? I was thinking we could start and go just around the table with our pre-selected set of questions. Does that make sense? And you'll notice on our form, the person who submitted it is in the parentheses, but we can just go around and take turns asking. Sound good?
Sure.
All right, wonderful. So with that, our first group is Abacus. Welcome. Thank you so much. If you want to come on up and introduce yourself and...
Okay, and then bringing up the presentation.
Yes.
Sure.
Great.
It's already like here.
Welcome, welcome.
So thank you very much for the opportunity to be here, and I have to say, this is a familiar room, and there are some familiar faces, and nothing we would love more than to continue working with you. So my name's David Eisen, and have been on working with you from the beginning to, I guess, what was a temporary end, and you're going to continue. My partner, David Pollock, who was involved in some of the earlier phases of the project, and Julia Patton, who is familiar and has done a lot of the work that got us to the point where we got to. And Devlin Kenny also worked on the project and isn't here tonight. And I just wanted to note about David, along with being my partner for 30-some years, and most of the firm's work is public work with cities and towns, a lot like Ayer. He's very involved with the town of Brookline and is very knowledgeable about public design, the whole public process, and a real asset in those terms.
Great. Are we screening?
So, and how
just
should I do
sharing.
a thumbs up for like go to the next slide?
Sure.
Okay, so go to the
Thumbs
next
up?
slide.
All right.
So in most of the cities and towns we work with, public process is an important part of what we do, working with committees and boards and user groups. And Joy's going to talk a bit about that.
Yeah, so we've all worked together on public process and site selection, and just trying to move this process forward together. And we're really excited to have the opportunity to continue doing that work with everyone. Abacus has worked with over a dozen cities and towns around Massachusetts, trying to engage the public, to work on different projects, to just really make sure that everyone feels heard and brought along in the process of any new building. And as a result of all of that experience, we've developed lots of different skills to make sure that everyone feels heard and included. Voices are part of the process, and that helps to make sure that at the end, everyone feels excited. You get what you want. Everyone has had an opportunity to make their voices heard. And so what you're seeing on the screen here is different ways that we've done that. The upper right-hand corner is us actually presenting to Ayer. But then in other ways, we have smaller meetings, larger meetings, have ways of reaching out virtually for people who might be unable to attend meetings at any given time. And as a result of that, the process, we can go to the next slide, please. During that process, we bring lots of different ideas to the table and present lots of, what is the vision that this community wants for every new building? What is the thing that you see? What is the thing you don't see? And we collect all of that data at the end of all the different meetings and public processes and engagement that we do. We collect that data, we analyze it, and then we can present it back and say, these are the words of your town. This is the things that matter to you most, and this is how we're prepared to give it to you.
And there really, in many ways, two kinds of public engagement we generally participate in. And, every city and town is different. Some towns say, well, really, we'll take care of that. We just want you to work with the committee on the board. So it's very much up to our clients how much engagement there is. So programming is one component of this, but also site selection is an important component of this. So you have a sense early in the process whether people support this, whether people don't, and often it's not unanimous one way or the other, but find out what the issues are early in the process. And again, it is very much to our clients, but we are available to be part of this. And one of the things, we can be the sort of sword and shield for people like you, because at the end of the day, we go back to Cambridge and we go back to Brookline, and we can speak out in ways sometimes people who live here can't. What we say is always tied into the work of the committee. But again, that's one role we play. Honest brokers, we don't have a dog in any fight. All we're trying to do is what's best for a town and client. So next image. So cost is a big issue, and kind of public construction is running, and this is a scary number, $1,000 a square foot. It's astounding how much it costs. So we may do programming with you, and you need a 16,000 square foot COA. Oh, but there's only $12 million available. And so this is an example from Orleans. We did a range of different sizes and a range of different programs at different price points and at different square footages. And on the bottom is the numbers and the words. But in some ways, what people read the most effectively are floor plans. What do you actually get for that money, so we can zero in on what's needed, but also what a town's willing to pay for. And next, and in most of the cities and towns we work in, we look at multiple sites. And this is Southampton. Actually, we looked at 8 different sites. We focused on these 4, and we dig pretty deeply and really interested in these sites that you've come up with, but we can leave that to later. But it's very much a part of the process. For example, for these sites, we did detailed layouts of what could be located there, and then the next image. So we feel like transparency is really important. Where do recommendations come from? So in this case, so here are all 8 sites at the top, and on the vertical column are a series of criteria we use to judge those sites. And some of it was physical issues, locational issues, how easy or hard would it be to address the programmatic issues on those sites. And the third site from the left, that bright green is good, red is bad, yellow someplace in between. So everybody knows why the committee, with our involvement, advised on this site or the other. And there's more participation than just the committee. There's a fair amount of outreach on what these criteria should be. And, thumbs up, down, and in the middle, what's a fair evaluation? Help build a consensus for the direction forward. Next slide. Thank you. So we've done a lot of work in Ayer. The first pass, and we looked at 6 different sites, just getting a sense of what would fit or not fit in there, sort of a very preliminary look. And, ultimately, most of these sites dropped away when we kind of dug into it. Next. But then we added to the list and we weeded out that list and looked at these 4 sites in detail. Main Street on the lower right, a lot of excitement about that. Contamination issues, and that dropped off the list. And, those are the kinds of things we dig into early. Let's find out, if there's a landmine underneath the surface, let's bring it to the surface earlier in the process. Groton Street, upper right, no landmines, but it was pretty tight. There are wetlands on the left, limited building space, limited parking. Great, it's near the center of town. Not so great that there, couldn't expand. Upper left, Park Street, that looked pretty good. But there are wetland issues, there are all kinds of site issues, then it ended up not being viable. And then Peroni Park looked really good until it didn't. And again, figuring out, is there support for it? What are the cost benefits? That kind of chart early in the process can help figure it out early. So, but these are the kinds of drawings we do. These are the kinds of layouts we do, and we're counting parking spaces and square footages, and will it actually work? And what are the traffic and parking? What are the traffic issues? Are there toes we're stepping on? These are critical issues. Near the center of town, is that great? Near the edge of town? Those are all the questions we ask. Next. And so these are all sites we looked at here. So at this point, and this also includes another in Devon, and I think we're leaving out 3 or 4, but at this point we know Ayer pretty well. We certainly know the places that don't work, and can help you figure out the ones that do work. Next. And we bring more general capability, sometimes early in the feasibility study process. These aren't important, but sustainability, resiliency, more and more, we're asked at very initial meetings. So if you looked at this and that in terms of those issues. So we've done LEED, we've done passive house, building code is really demanding. We've been looking at water source heat pump, air source heat pumps. So we have familiarity with all of those systems when it get to the point where those are the questions you want to talk about in terms of getting things built. Next. And universal design, there's ADA, there's MAAB, you need to meet the letter of the law, but there's also, how do you bring people together rather than separate them in the ways that you develop sites and bring people into the building? So all 4 of these are up here because they're on relatively steep sites, and we reworked all of these to make them as easy to enter, easy to leave as possible with everyone together. There isn't a separate route for the wheelchair, low slopes as opposed to ziggy-zaggy ramps. These are important in any public building, but especially in a senior center. Next. And this is the last image. We've done a lot of this kind of work. There's a lot of stuff we haven't shown here, what we're doing in Billerica with David Grubb and the head of the COA. I think that was in some of the material. We've done a lot of this. Every town's different. There's some generalized principles we've learned. The number one generalized principle is you listen to the client, you listen to the town. That's the starting point for all of this, and then we can bring the appropriate skills to the table to help get you to where you want to go. So that's who we are, and look forward to questions.
Great, thank you. So I think we have a prepared set of questions. Do we want to, I can ask the first one, we just go around the table. Does your firm have a preference for a senior center design with the entire building on one floor, or can a satisfactory design of a senior center be accomplished with a building on 2 floors?
Yes, David Pollack. Generally, if it's not too, it also depends on the size of the facility, how much it stretches out. But I think there's in general, I think single story works pretty well in terms of managing staff and FTEs and being really efficient. However, in Billerica, they actually
2 floors.
Preferred 2 floors. Prefer splitting the staff up a little. We're working with the city of Attleboro. They also the COA director and the staff like the idea of kind of having staff on 2 different floors. So we listen and follow your lead. It's awfully easy to get around. You don't have any fire stairs. You don't have an elevator. Those aren't costs that like drive the whole budget for sure. Yeah. But
and in Billerica, it was a small site in the perfect location. The only way it worked was 2 floors, and the head of the COA said, you know what, I actually like it this way. They have a 2-floor center now, and they've gotten used to it. And they've split up really the sort of social work and counseling is on the 2nd floor where there's more privacy. The general administration is on the ground floor. It's like a house. The quiet, calmer stuff is on the 2nd floor, and the noisier stuff is, so there's no right answer. And we'll ask the questions and show the trade-offs, but ultimately...
It has to do with the land as well. Again, all my town service for the last 30 years is in Brookline, which is now our biggest town since Framingham became a city about 5 years ago. And we have a 3-story senior center, because that's it. Like, it's right there in the middle of Coolidge Corner on Center Street, and that's what you got. Like, it just... work right in there.
Work with what you got.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer to the second question is easy. Yes.
Oh.
It's better to be in the center of town, and it's better to be at the edge of town. It all
So he has the
depends
questions, I guess.
on the location and what people are looking for. And David, you've looked at these issues a lot, the trade-offs, and there usually is
They took it off the end.
similar kind of trade-offs.
Yeah.
Well, we'll let somebody who's going to ask the question.
Yeah,
So you just figured out you got hold of it.
but very often we're asked to look at exactly these 2 options. The center of town tends to be smaller, more limited parking, but everybody's there. In the edge of town, there's more space, there's more parking, and further from people. And that kind of evaluation criteria chart is a good way to assess that. And it's not just the duality of center of town versus edge of town. It's all of the things that come with that: proximity to natural areas, traffic jams, where's the center of gravity of where people live.
Outdoor programming, is there room for outdoor garden, like landscape programming for that part of the senior center? Whatever you put there, if there's more land, you can do more of that. I mean, but if there, it's also like very town specific. Is there a hangout, a luncheonette where people like to, I mean, in Brookline, it's like the Busy Bee, or whatever. And being near that may mean a lot to people to, how do you build community?
And this is often a good reason to crowdsource this. We can say, oh, center of town, that's in the middle of everything, what a great place. And other people will say, well, the people who use the COA, they don't really like going downtown. They really like shopping at the shopping mall. And it's like, okay, the center of town isn't really where people want to be. So we always want to cross-check certainly our understandings, and even committees sometimes can not understand what 1,000 other people are thinking.
Can we follow up on that stuff? How do you want to do it?
I think we can. Yeah.
So Ayer being a small town, that question was a little loaded because, for instance, in Groton, which is a big town, their senior center is way out of town. I was thinking in Ayer, there may not be a way out of town. It may always be fairly close to town because the town itself is small. So I was guessing on a mile basis. Do you guys having a guess on a mile? How many miles from downtown? In other words, if it's only 2 miles from downtown or a mile and a half, is it still okay to be closer to downtown? Is that still within the range of being fairly close? Or do you know, it's just all about the land? Well, if it's all about the land, it's all about the land.
A lot of the attraction of being in the town center is, is the term walkability.
Yep.
And not being reliant on cars. In some towns, you actually have senior housing, significant a number of senior apartments or 55 plus facilities, however they're structured financially. And so you may have more walkability for seniors not right in the middle of town because that's not where the senior housing is. But probably in Ayer, a lot of the seniors are still living in their houses. And, some significant number are still driving. And then how do they get around? So I think transit access, whether people drive themselves, whether their family members drive them, whether it's near the schools, so you kind of have multitasking with the library, dropping kids off, there's a lot of convenience involved, a lot of questions about community, about how do you build community.
Okay, thanks.
You want to read the second one? Third one?
Yeah, the third one. Good. Okay. Third question. As a public building, there'll be many particular interests seeking to have their ideas implemented. How do you navigate conflicts between competing interests while maintaining the architectural and design integrity of the structure? Do you have examples of successfully navigating competing interests in other communities?
Well, we're always navigating between competing interests because projects we do are just a slice of the world we live in. And listening respectfully, talking respectfully, having a dialogue between different people, mediating between different people. I mean, we are kind of honest brokers, and then that kind of chart, and then the community outreach, so everyone feels heard, and then being able to say, this is what we're hearing. And if there's common ground, we're hearing you saying this and you're saying this, and as if they're in conflict with each other. But here's what we are proposing, or what we're hearing is a possible common ground between them. It's really kindergarten stuff. But you can be 80 years old and you have not learned your kindergarten stuff. We're all a bit like that. But it's really about listening and being respectful. And I would say it's also about leadership. Bill Ricca, a lot of competing needs and interests, and the town manager sort of said, this is what we're going to do. And then he went through a whole process. So we can provide one kind of leadership with the outside-in leadership, but there's the inside-out leadership. Who's going to make this their own and help find the common ground? In a way, we can't always do that as outsiders. You're experts on Ayer, we're experts on planning and design, and you bring those together. Did you?
Well, I was gonna say one great thing about the public outreach process is it helps. So there's a picture that we showed in the presentation that was from Ayer itself, where what we've learned over the process is some voices happen to be bigger than others, but no idea is bigger than others, right? And so making sure that everyone's ideas get out there, and so making it available for everyone to voice what they think. And so the image I'm referring to is a Post-it note exercise where every single person writes their answer to a series of questions. In this case, it might be what program is the most exciting to you, and that is real data that you can then line up and present back to the community, and it becomes very obvious what things are the most important and what things are less important, and no voice in a situation like that becomes bigger than another. And taking that set of data, you can then provide it back and say, okay, here's, we need to make a building, here's our options, like here's our budget, here's our site, and here's this set of things will serve the greatest amount of people based on the input we've gotten from you. In that way, it makes it kind of easier to form a solution and a path forward, because it's very clear, like you've all participated and here's the best we can do with it.
One of the most remarkable exercises that we've done in terms of having the people's voice resonate definitively was when we did site selection for what in that case happened to be a multi-generational center for the town of Lincoln. And we started out with 5 town-owned sites, and we went through the whole exercise of all the things you've seen, schematic design, and the whole public process. And then Lincoln has an annual town meeting in the spring, and they have something called State of the Town in the fall, in which they take up 1 or 2 big questions and have a town meeting, but it's not like a whole warrant. They'll just have on a Saturday morning in the fall. So this was at State of the Town. We presented the 5 sites, and then we put boards in the school auditorium for each site up. And when everybody showed up, they got 2 little round stickers. Every single resident who came to town meeting got 2 stickers. And throughout the whole presentation and after, they would wander up onto the side stage and put their stickers where they wanted to put the center. And at the end of our presentation, you looked around and there were like 4 boards with just a smattering of stickers. And one board was completely concealed behind all of the stickers. It was done. We were like, okay, now we know. Mm-hmm. The people have spoken, and there didn't need to be any second guessing or anything. We took a picture of that, put it up on the website.
And would you have known ahead of time? I guess it was sort of clear, but
no, we had no way of knowing it was going to be that overwhelming. We didn't know that.
Okay. When choosing a site for a senior center, what do you see as the top 3 most important considerations that will encourage use of the building in terms of size, location, topography, ease of access, etc.?
That it looks like the place you want to be, that it's exciting, that it's interesting. You go by at night, you look in the window, and it's like, oh my gosh, I'd like to be inside there. On a nice day, you go by and people are hanging out on the outside. Everybody wants to have fun.
It draws you in.
What's that?
It draws you in.
Yeah, it draws you in. And there is a second component to that. As much as senior centers are about social life and engagement and meeting, they're vulnerable people and who need privacy. So carved out within that, you have a place for someone to, lay out the challenges they're having in life. So that's a little bit later. That's after you walk in the door and look around. But that's sort of everything you imagine you want to do, you can do there. There are activities. So this is where location comes in. If it is in a place where a lot of people see it, you are much more likely to have people, I'm never going to a senior center, and you say, oh my gosh, there's my buddy Joe. Why don't I go inside? So, first you make it visible through the location, and then you make it visible through the design. And I think that really helps. And when we interviewed for this job 4.5 years ago, one of the discussions is Center for Active Living. Should it be a center of active living rather than a senior center? And that's about branding, but that helps too. That helps, get people interested, or at least not turn them off. Like, I'm not going to a senior center. That's the first thing, is to not say, this is not for you, this is not for me. And then the second thing is to, bring them in the door however you can, and then reward them from coming in the door. Whether.
I mean, you pretty much hit the nail on the head, I think, with that. In terms, the other thing is just programming, right? Like, what does the community want to be doing, and getting them to a place to do it. And then visibility, I think, it's always, at a restaurant, people usually get sat closer to windows at the beginning, right? So then the restaurant looks busy, and then more people want to go in. And it's the same idea, is making sure that there's programming that brings people in, friendships can, continue to flourish and bond, and you see people, and then more people want to come, and, and then making it comfortable and friendly and a good place to be.
So topography is on the list. Attleboro, the new senior center, or the Adaptive Reuse Senior Center, is like on top of a hill. And so it's interesting that topography is unlikely, but everyone feels like this is a good place to be. It's fun and exciting, and
well, it's not a spectacular setting. They were able to acquire for what to me is astonishingly short money a 9-hole golf course that had been privately held, and finally, ran its course. And the town had a right of first refusal. So everybody, went to a wedding in the clubhouse and everything on the golf course, and so that's going to be repurposed for the senior center. So there's all this already community attachment to the building, and it's not really on a hill. It's actually on a little plinth, or like an acropolis that's about 15 feet tall, which is where they piled all the dirt in the 50s when they built the, out of the water hazards and the ponds. They built this little, anyway. But the question was about what are the 3 most important criteria for site selection, I think. How do you decide what the most...
Encourage use of the building.
Oh, to encourage use of the building. Okay. Yeah, part of it also gets to really mission focus and programming, because for senior centers today, the conversation is really interesting because it spans this gamut from, on the one hand, this Center for Active Living notion, and to sort of lower the median age of the participants and get it together and have it be a community center focused on serving older community members. But, a lot of communities are really interested in this, getting the 60-somethings and the 50-somethings in there. But the Council on Aging, brief and mission is dominated by all this need in our communities, and housing insecurity and food insecurity and dementia and loneliness and medical issues and all this, like counseling and tax advising and all of this. So there's a ton of that we're serving multiple populations and multiple needs all at the same time in a shared facility. And I think understanding, you need to get both of those populations in, right? It's not an either or.
So to boil it down in 15 seconds, you asked, what are the 3 things? Put it in a location where people will see it, design it so people will want to go inside, and once they're inside, reward them with a place full of life and energy. So that's boiling it down to the three.
And connection to nature, if possible. You don't need a lot of land to be able to do that, but we live in New England. It's cold outside for a lot of the year, and still we can participate in the natural landscape 365 days out of the year in a well-designed building.
All right, what are your guiding principles in terms of design and programming content for the senior center you've worked on? What is your vision of a successful senior center that meets the needs of its varied users?
So I would say the biggest thing is create a place that people want to be. And so the one way of doing that, that we believe in, is creating open, airy connection to the outdoors, places that are not just, a hallway with rooms off of it. Because the important thing is you get people there from the MBA program, but then the real community building and the real bonding happens outside after, right? You're talking to this person, oh, I haven't seen you in a while, oh, why don't we, go around, the corner over to the, cafe part and get a coffee, let's stay there. And then you make a plan to, I'll see you next week, or whatever it is. But it's those moments of connection outside of events that really are, for me, I think the most important part of creating any kind of community center, because those are the moments where you find a community.
Thank you.
How do you work together with your team of subcontractors? Do you oversee their work and take responsibility for any mistakes that they make?
Of course.
Wait, they don't make mistakes. Because we find the mistakes before they make them.
There you go.
But
that's more aimed at design and construction, at building buildings. And, we are public architects. Almost all of our work is for municipalities and other Massachusetts agencies. And we usually a full third of our fee, sometimes more, is actually is associated with the construction phase. Yeah. We spend an enormous amount of time both coordinating construction, being on site for construction, coordinating the documents, coordinating our engineers, but coordination of our documents prior to putting them out to bid. In the construction drawing process, we put an enormous amount of effort into. And we've been doing this for long enough that we really understand, where the baton gets fumbled between the handoff and just site electrical versus civil engineering, or, everything that goes into ceilings and coordinating structure and lighting and ducts and sprinklers that all are crisscrossing in the ceilings. And so we just spend a lot of time making sure everything fits together and works together, and that people are talking to each other.
And I don't think anybody ever says, oh, our structural engineer messed up, because their mess up is our mess up. I mean, pointing fingers doesn't help. If we've signed the contract, we're responsible for everything that happens.
And I would also say that during the construction process, I love the construction process, but you work really closely with the contractors. It's like, and then they'll reach out and ask you a question, and you'll problem solve together, and it's this really collaborative approach, right? And it's the same with our consultants as well, our civil or electrical, right? You develop these close relationships, and then you work through things, and you have an open line of communication, and it helps to solve problems before they start. And then when there's something that comes up, people don't view it as a problem. It's more of a, how are we going to solve this thing that came up, not a, you have a big problem. And it's, I don't know, I really enjoy that collaboration.
But I think an important thing to do is bring in sub-consultants early, like civil engineers. And we went through this a bit on some of the initial studies we did here and what we do other places. Do you think there's contamination? Let's bring in our hazmat consultant early on. Are there rainwater, runoff issues? Let's bring the civil engineer in early. And that's mostly for the benefit of our clients at that point, but it benefits the whole project to bring them in, let them speak up, rather than decisions have been made and then have them dig us out of it if they talk about things that we hadn't anticipated. So early and often. Same cost estimating. Same thing. Cost estimators are an important part of our team. $1,000 a square foot, yeah, but you know, we get professional cost estimators. If you're looking at site alternatives, Southampton, we got 4 different sites conceptually priced. We did complete floor plan layouts. We got civil engineers involved. The town doesn't have sewer, so it's all septic, and then did conceptual narratives, and then we got them priced. So that helps avoid problems down the line.
Just a brief follow-up. When you're thinking about the construction portion of it, what are the attributes that you would look for in a construction company that make you think these people are going to be good to work with? You know, I think that we can have a really successful partnership.
Well, it's an interesting question with public construction, because kind of by law, almost, they've got to be the lowest responsible bidder.
Unless it's construction management.
Yeah, unless it's
there's other
construction
approaches,
management. You know, for example, Bill Ricca, we're doing construction manager at risk, which there are trade-offs. Chapter 149, 149A, I'm going to get a little bit specific here. But they can be part of the team.
I mean, reference, you know, we do a lot of reference checks, and the key question is communication. You know, I think one of the things that, you know, getting a little bit down, this is kind of down in the weeds, but we look for continuity of staffing during the construction phase of a project. You know, things start to fall apart if the superintendent keeps getting replaced every 3 months. That makes it really tough to deliver a good project. So the core team of the superintendent, I would probably almost always, I'd rather have an A-level superintendent and a B-level project manager, but an A-level of each would be ideal.
And this would come out, you're saying, in the reference check phase of the work. Those are the
Well, and also
questions
once you get, we asked, did they keep the same super on the site throughout your whole entire project, if it's a bigger project?
Right. And setting expectations very early, like first day, like you're the contractor, here are our expectations, here's what we expect to see every project meeting, here, you know, we need to see your schedule. You know, at certain, you know, sometimes we work with housing authorities or whatever, we say don't be on site before X o'clock, right? And like, we just make that just bottom line, here's what you have to do, there's no room for negotiation. And you know, once you do that, then it opens the door to, I don't know, making sure everyone is happier.
And if we get those into specifications, a little hard at the kickoff meeting to come up with all kinds of requirements that weren't in the specifications. So the more we write it into the bid documents, the more likely we are to have them perform as anticipated, and we have grounds for taking action if they violate their contract, which is based on the specifications. Mm-hmm. So laying it out early, what we want from them, and how they're going to serve the client's interests.
All right, do you want to ask the last one, and then we're getting short on time?
Dave, you're up, I think.
How long do you anticipate a project like this would take?
Well, what's the I'm not sure what project are you talking about?
The site selection and getting us to, you know, how long do you think it would take us to get a conceptual, something that we could bring to town meeting or to the town to say, here's where we're ready to look for funding for?
If the sites you anticipate using are not workable, this is with the assumption you have 2 workable sites, right? That's my understanding of what you have, and that enough due diligence has been done so the bottom's not likely to fall out. We look at both of those, we take care, we examine them, we make a proposal.
Conduct a public process,
Yeah.
review.
Yeah. 6 months?
Yeah, that can
something
go,
like that?
That can go pretty quick. I mean, do you have two town, do you have a special town meeting?
Yeah.
So again, if you've got clear running room to a site and you just want to, you can push through this. I mean, the answer that we often, reflect back to you guys, which is frustrating for everybody, is this depends a lot more on you than it does on us, right? It depends on the town's process and how quickly you can move and how much ground you've really, like, if you tilled the garden so that, you can just plant the seeds and it grows, or, how much communication needs to happen. And with some towns, we're not in a hurry. Like, we will work at as fast and as slow as you want. If you want to, like, bang this out, great. But if you feel like you have to, like, kind of slow cook it with your community, we're not, sort of looking at our watch and saying, we only said we would do this for this. Some of our fees stretch out over long periods of time. We kind of work at your schedule. But as David said, if the land was clear and we could work with you to get something in front of ST in the fall. That'd be a little tight. It's a bit of a challenge, but, sure, why not?
And the worry is if can you do it in 3.5 months? Well, we could do it 3.5 months. We're not sure you can do it in 3.5 months in terms of the public engagement or whatever the kind of discussions. But Orleans was about 6 months, and their issue is they didn't have a good site. And Southampton, we picked a site ready to go and they don't have the money yet. But both of those, every other week, we're meeting with the committee. We came to, Orleans and Southampton a number of times. And they were both about six months from beginning to end.
With the public, if the community process is something that you guys feel like is going to be make or break, then scheduling over the summer becomes, something you have to think about really carefully. Because a lot of times people, say, wait a minute, when did this, they come back on Labor Day and they're like, what? Like, you did this without, this is not good, so there's some little logistics around that you kind of get going before, the end of June and stuff.
And one of the things we tell our clients is, tell us what you want to have done when, and we'll work backwards from there and set up a schedule. What we do, what you do, what anybody else has to do to meet that schedule. And can we perform? Can you perform? If we don't have time to do our job, we'll speak up. If our clients don't have time to do their job, they should speak up, and then maybe you need to go to the next town meeting. But it's about dialogue. It's about laying it out and thinking it through.
Wonderful. I think that was all of our initial questions. Do you guys have any closing things you'd like to say?
What are these 2 sites? And maybe you don't want to talk about them. I mean, just...
There's 3 sites.
Yeah.
There's three.
And you don't have to, we can...
The attempt, since you last left us, the attempt has been to determine if the town had land that we could use for site rather than going out to the public and buying land.
Yeah.
The task, I think, when you were first around was not that in depth. They focused on large pieces of property, but they may or may not have been town-owned property.
Yeah.
So the first task this group did, and still working on, was try to determine if there was town-owned property that we could get into our control, that we could save the cost of buying the land. So we have ironed down to 3 sites, but we still have little outstanding issues, of course, on each site.
Yeah.
One is closer to town than the others. 2 are actually fairly close to town. One is up by the school. So there's basically 3 sites we believe are large enough, but they all have the challenges. There'll be traffic, there'll be ledge, there'll be different things here and there, but possibly.
Well, there could be legal, administrative
Could be
issues.
some legal issues with it. But at the moment, our task was to try to determine if we could put it on a piece of town-owned land first, instead of going out and paying, millions for a piece of property at this point in time.
Yeah. So we don't do this work because we're getting rich off of it. We do it because we love doing this
$5
work.
an hour, is that what you said?
What's that?
Mark up at $5 an hour, I think it was, what you mentioned.
That was for one project.
We'll take that one.
But we would love to keep working with you. And Katie, it was so nice. I so appreciated being invited to meet with, they were all women. And that's okay. I want to see some guys
Yes.
next time. But what a great group of people, and what great programs, and what a lousy building. I mean, so
That's a very good
we'd
summary.
love to work with all of you, getting you what you need and deserve. And this work we do, we love doing it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. Yeah, good to talk with you. Thanks to see you.
Oh, yeah. Do you want a copy of that, or have one printed copy that
That'd be great. I could take it and scan it for
you
everybody.
want to?
Or can you email it to me? Do you want to just email it to me? Yeah, just email it to me and then I'll distribute it to the group and post it, yep.
Thank you.
Do we need to introduce ourselves or not?
I didn't see the next one come in.
I guess it doesn't matter.
Oh, they are, I guess.
Okay.
Are you, oh. Sorry, I was. Be still my heart. No,
You think the other ones are here?
no, breakfast, oh, I know.
And breakfast, Joe.
The breakfast of, that's the breakfast of champions.
Chocolate and Pepsi, can't beat it.
And then they started making them with peanut butter on the inside.
No, they call them Yodas.
There's there, okay. Do you want me to, I guess I can, why don't you go, you're up already. No, you good, you can go. You're already standing up.
Oh, I know.
BH and A?
Yeah. Bargman Hendry. Bargman Hendry or Bargman? Bargman Hendry.
In the references, I just wanted to say, you'll come across the OPM. That is someone hired by the town.
Other people's money.
Any project that costs over 1.5 million has to have that as a kind of a liaison. So it's, when they say there was a problem with it, that's not somebody that works for the architects or anything. That's a town person who's kind of managing things.
Thank you, Sarah. Just hand these down.
You need more.
Got a lot in.
Oh, we're all set here.
One more.
I got one. Thank you.
Yeah, very nice.
Welcome.
Thank you. Is there an advancer or?
Yeah, let me get
Oh, I
this
see.
ready first. Screen. Maybe let's take the mouse.
Great, thank you.
Left click it to move along.
Can you, we wanted to close that door.
Yeah, we can close the door. I think it'd be fine. Yep.
Here, everybody.
Okay. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming. And if you want to introduce yourself and take a few minutes to give a brief presentation, and then we have a pre-selected set of questions that we'd love to ask you afterwards.
I'd love to do a short presentation because I think it can make the feasibility study come to life a little bit better.
Great.
So my name's Joel Bargman, and I know I'm supposed to come to these interviews with a team of people to show how excited we are about the project. I like to come because I show how excited we are about the project by having the principal of the firm who's going to manage and run your project. I'm the face and the doer of the feasibility studies, and when you look at our references, they'll corroborate that. I have a switch watch on the cover. these feasibility studies are like Swiss watches. You can't have 5 people working on them. You want to control the message that goes out to the community. You want the information for each site to be consistent. You want to manage the politics and the different opinions about things, and I find that the best way to manage the message and to really get the message across is to be that point person, because this is the most important part of the project, getting the money, getting it approved at town meeting. If I can just have 5 minutes here, so I am here alone, but we do have a team, and this team that's there is geotechnical engineers, hazardous waste material engineers, civil engineers, landscape architects, full gamut of team members that will help us with the site selection for what's right for the city, the town of Ayer. And what we've done is we've sort of taken these 5 sites that you've looked at, and I hope I visited them. It's a little hard to tell where some of them start and some of them stop, but have an idea of what you're up against. And the way that we would like to go through that is to look at this. This is a site data matrix that levels the information about each site consistent, so that we're sure that we've treated each site the same. We're providing the citizens of your town the same amount of information on each site, how big it is, what the zoning issues are, and it's completely consistent across the 5 sites that you have considered. So what we call this is comparative analytical feasibility study. We want to compare analytically so that people feel that it's not a biased presentation. Each site gets its own site plan drawing. The purpose of that is that we can see, does the building fit? Does your program fit? Does the number of parking spaces fit? We can also then do a comparative cost estimate that shows what one site costs versus what another site costs. So again, treat everything equally, show them comparative against each other. Take your parking and traffic. Some of the sites obviously have some, the one on West Main Street might have more traffic issues to deal with. So we go through and we do a traffic report for each site. We do parking for each site because there may be different levels of overflow parking available depending on where your site is. And then we look at when the program is being used. So if it's a site, say at the school, the high school site, you have different uses coming and going into that site during the day. And so you want to design your parking to accommodate those different time levels during the day and make sure each hour of the day is accommodated, as well as not being over-designed. We'll do, if it's required, geotechnical analysis. Sometimes you really have to do that because there's fill on a site. We'll do wetland analysis, or a number of your sites have wetlands to them. All of the engineering reports are done in more or less detail as required by each site. And then this is a project that just had 3 sites, but you look at them with a series of criteria on the left and we evaluate them. You can see 2 of them have a lot of check marks and 1 of them doesn't. That one that doesn't have a lot of check marks is clearly deficient in many different ways. The hardest thing is to come up with the conclusion, though, and what we like to do is with a group like this, come up with an evaluation matrix. Here's 12 criteria that we use to finally evaluate each site. And within each criteria, there are 3 levels that you can rank the site against and their criteria. What this does is it confirms to the voters that you've looked at this in a level way, that each site's been treated levelly, and that as a group, we've adjusted the criteria to be equal and unbiased to each site. Now, it's impossible to be completely unbiased, so we have a final category that allows you to voice your opinion about why you think one site might be better than another site. And then those points are added in to the more analytical category. There's actually 36 different categories we look at that are summarized in those 12 points. I just want to close that every dog has a bad habit, right? Or don't let perfect get in the way of good. There are no perfect sites. The upper left is Needham. We spent a year and a half and we ended up in an MBTA parking lot, taking half of the commuter rail lot. They love it. It's been up for 10 years. Falmouth, it's a building in the parking lot of the Falmouth Cape Cod League baseball team. Situate, in a parking lot in a school adjacent to a bunch of other field programs. And then Newton, the biggest city we've worked with, 80,000 people, a very tiny, tiny site that can only have 15 parking spaces on it. So how do we accommodate it? Everybody's happy to have their sites. Everybody's happy to have their buildings. So I try to reassure people that it's not so cataclysmic. You end up loving the site that you have the way your kids love the college that they went to when they finally got in one. And after visiting your sites, I drove around town and said, well, what if there aren't any sites? We've had this problem before. Are there private sites? Maybe a private site becomes available that may be cheaper than the things you have to accommodate on a public site to go forward. So with that, I'll open it up to your questions. But they're exciting and fun process here.
I thought your paperwork and your presentation was extremely comprehensive. I don't know if you felt that you had to rush through it or not, but
Well, I did.
I hope you didn't feel like you had to rush through it, because we could have almost spent a little more time on each of those particulars because of the comprehensive, in my opinion, fairly comprehensive. This is not one of the questions on the list, I'm sorry. So that is just my opening thought. Do you want us to start with the typical stuff, or do we want to talk in general terms?
I think we need to go through the questions first.
Okay, and then go through back?
Yeah,
So ends up it's my turn for...
I think it's your turn.
Oh, okay,
Yep.
okay, so... The first, so we put together a group of questions that we're trying to ask each
Yep.
prospective architectural firm, and just to get a general idea. So the first question we have is, does your firm have a preference for senior center design with the building on one floor, or potentially can the satisfactory design of a senior center be accomplished with a building on 2 floors, or even 3 floors, but 2 floors, we'll say, 1 to 2 floor comparison, let's say.
I'll say all of our senior centers except one have been 2 stories in the last 5 or 6 years. Well, it's not a problem going 2 stories. People like them because they're denser, there's more activity. If you have a 2-story space that connects the levels so people understand where different programs are, that's very helpful. But we find that the 2-story building is very satisfactory, and it sort of removes some of the senior assisted living or connotations that go with bigger, flat, 1-story buildings. So we don't get any opposition to the 2-story structure. It fits on sites better. It allows parking in a little bit more comprehensive and easy manner. And anything you can do to reduce the footprint is helpful from a site perspective, because you have to do less clearing of the site. We do 1-story buildings if the communities ask. Sudbury is a 1-story building, but most of our others are 2 stories. Newton happens to be a 3-story building. What you do is you design it sort of like you might think of a house. The living room and the big spaces are on the ground floor. The more private spaces are on the 2nd floor. The men's billiard room and the dance room is on the attic level. It's a destination, so you think about it like a house. I'm going to go to that room anyway, so I don't mind if it's on the 3rd floor, but you need to get your big crowds in and out on the ground floor. So there's some thought that goes into it, but it's not a problem to go multi-level.
Okay.
The,
Do we want anyone to follow up on that, or we're good? Okay.
in terms of location of a senior center within a small town, and Ayer, as you might be aware, is particularly geographically quite small. Do you have a general preference to be closer to the center of town or within a certain number of miles to the center of town in order to make it more visible, more usable?
Well, what we like to do is have it be on a main street where it's visible from that main street, but whether it's in the middle of town or a mile and a half outside of town, that is not the main factor for us. It's visibility, so people see it and they see activity. They say, well, there's a lot of people there. Like the library on Saturday was packed. You go, what the heck's going on in your library? There wasn't a parking space in the parking lot. It makes you want to go in and see what the heck's going on. So I think visibility is key. The distance that we look at is what's the response time for fire, EMT, and police should there be an emergency at the center. That sort of is our main criteria. We'll find that seniors don't mind driving a mile. The citizens in Falmouth did not want to be downtown because of the traffic. They have a senior center that's smack in the middle of downtown. Turns out not to be so bad. It can work in in many ways. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
I thought it would be great downtown because it's a beautiful downtown, and if you could find a space to put a two-story senior center, I think it would bring some activity and economic vitality to the downtown that, you know, we're all missing in our downtown. So
It hasn't been for lack of trying.
yeah,
Exactly.
but I love that main street.
Yeah.
Can we tell the bank building next door would be perfect senior center.
Maybe the town hall would
Yeah,
move in.
exactly.
As a public building, there are many particular interests seeking to have their ideas implemented. How do you navigate conflicts between competing interests while maintaining the architectural and design integrity of the structure? And do you have examples of successfully navigating competing interests in other communities?
Just so we have them written up. So
Yeah, okay.
that was question 3, right?
Yeah, so it's a great question. That's my job in this phase, is to mitigate the competing interests. The main competing interest is that the trend on senior centers is to make them a little bit more multi-generational or allow them to be used for other purposes. So if we put a multi-purpose room in the community, in the senior center, and it has audio, visual, and TV capability and distance learning, because that's how senior centers work these days. You can connect different senior centers. You can also use that for town meetings, select and Conservation Commission. You're building some assets. You're building a beautiful kitchen as part of your multi-purpose room. Can you get more leverage out of those spaces? How do you convince people, seniors, that you might want to let those spaces be used for other purposes when it's not competing with senior purposes? So we go through and we sort of discuss that kind of issue, and I find that that's really the biggest controversy in the project. The second biggest controversy will be one-story or two-story, because a lot of people come to the table thinking that it should be a one-story building, and then it's an issue of showing how a two-story building can be beneficial, smaller footprint, more energy efficient because it has less surface area, going through the different issues that impact why someone might want one of the decisions versus another. So, you know, I think that it's important to hear every side of the equation and not dismiss one side's vision versus another, but then you have to work through those competing aspects of the vision.
And I guess they were addressed by, you know, what you were talking about in your presentation, that, you know, your matrices, your
Right. The
data matrix and
the data matrix tries to put all of the factors that you think about on one document and have each one treated equally so you can see where the differences are. That helps decide, I think, which is the better site. versus another one. But it doesn't always help solve someone's idea of what might be better or not. And at the end of the day, you're not going to get 100% unanimity. We need to get 67% unanimity, which is pretty hard. But, you know, there's always going to be some people that don't like a particular conclusion. But at the end of the day, I think, you know, Falmouth's first choice was to go in a section of the high school field, and everybody loved that site. They just couldn't get to an agreement with the school committee and with the security on school properties and those. At the end of the day, when the project got built, they're happy as can be. So I think, you know, people have to have a little bit of faith that the goal is to get the building done, not to win the battle on which site the building goes to, you know.
When choosing a site for a senior center, what do you see as the top three most important considerations that will encourage use of the building? Things like in terms of size, location, topography, ease of access.
So we like to have the topography be so that you can get from your car to the building in less than 2% slope on the parking lot. That's perfectly accessible for anybody, even really easy on a wheelchair. We try to get 50% of the parking within 125 feet of the front door. Not everybody has a handicap sticker on their car, and not everybody that's going to come to the senior center that may need assistance getting in is going to be in a wheelchair or using a walker. They may have canes, they may have other disabilities, or they may just not want to have a handicap sticker on their car for various reasons. So it's important to get those spaces near the front door so people can get in. Not everybody needs that requirement, so we try to meet 50% of that to really make it accessible. We like to have outdoor activities. It's important to have outdoor space as indoor space in many people's opinions. Can you have a little walking trail, a quarter-mile loop around the building? Can you have a bocce court? Can you have a community garden? If you have pickleball, tremendously popular. You might want to have a parking lot that situates some of your cars next to the outdoor activities, so again, people can come and use those. So what's the answer to your question? Parking, level, and then getting in and out of the site. Left turns are particularly problematic, so one reason I emphasize the traffic and parking in that introductory remark is that our traffic engineers looking at your site can really help assure voters, yes, I can see 250 feet to the left, to the right and to the left as I exit your site. That's plenty of time to see if somebody's coming and feel comfortable coming out. So those are site issues. And like I said, I think given the size of your community, I don't see a huge problem if it's at the high school versus at the DPW site. You know, nothing's really that far away.
Okay, great.
I'm sorry, Katie. Do we know if Dave is still with us?
Let me grab the mouse from you, Joel. Quick. Thanks.
I am here, thank you.
Oh, he's great. You got there.
Did Dave want to ask a question at all or have anything?
I'll sit out on asking just to avoid any communication gaps, but I'm certainly listening and taking notes. Thank you, though.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. The next question from the committee. What are your guiding principles in terms of design and program content for the senior centers you've worked on? What is your vision of a successful senior center that meets the needs of its varied users?
That's probably going to be a controversial answer. The last 4 senior centers that we've done are centers for active living, and they include a gym. No one thought about doing gyms in senior centers 10 years ago. Now, everybody wants a gym, and everybody loves a walking track where the seniors can walk in the wintertime and not be in the ice and snow. And they can play pickleball, In Sandwich, we have a separate entry to the gym so that after 3, when seniors are done, the recreation groups can come in and use the gym without being in the senior center and all. So yeah, it adds money to the project, but it makes it a building for everybody, not just for seniors. And the senior demographic, I was shocked in Falmouth. The finishes they came up with were very modern. The program they had was a 1,500 square foot exercise with really high-end equipment. And we asked them, how are you making these decisions? And they said, the senior center is not for us. We want it to be around for the next 50 years. We're trying to think about the people in the future and not have this feel dated and not used going down the timeline. So I think that's sort of the thing that we need to think about is what makes it exciting. I think the kitchen makes it exciting. The kitchen is the heart and soul of a home, and it's the heart and soul of a senior center, and you can make that kitchen that has to have all these commercial aspects to it, ventilation and fire suppression, into a program space. Teaching how to make a meal for husbands that are widowed, or cooking classes for different groups. In Needham, they bring in high school kids and have activities in the kitchen. In Falmouth, they have a kitchen that serves in Andover meals and sandwiches, and it's a little revenue generator for the senior center. The kitchen's really exciting, and what I love is you used to put the kitchen, well, we still put the kitchen off of the multi-purpose room, but we don't dedicate half the multi-purpose room for the food all the time, because now your biggest room has got tables in it and you can't have Zumba, or you can't have a movie, or you can't do this. What the trend is to make a little cafe. You can still have meals in the cafe, but it doesn't dominate your multi-purpose program space, and you really begin to get much more use out of that particular space. So probably lose a job telling you gym, but the dining area, we moved to a cafe type space, and that cafe type space now becomes a social space, and the social space is really important. No one wants to say we're building a senior center so that seniors can go have a place to talk, but it's a hugely important factor of a senior center. If the 3 things they say to help with dementia and age is socialization, diet, and exercise, those are the things that a senior center can provide, in addition to lifelong learning and educational outreach and other things.
I don't quite understand what you mean by, a cafe center or whatever.
Starbucks cafe. You go into Starbucks and there's a little cafe off to the side where you can sit at a table and eat. It's not a real, doesn't feel like a dining room. It doesn't feel institutional. It's much more one-on-one, socialized, and it doesn't use up your multi-purpose room, which is how dining is typically been done. Congregate dining and daily dining, breakfasts or lunches, typically take up a half or a third of your multi-purpose room. And so we've been taking that out of the multi-purpose room.
Then how do you accommodate the number of people that you...
Well, when you have a big event like Valentine's Day or Thanksgiving or once a month, you do go into the multi-purpose room, and you can set that room up for 100, 130, however many people you need. But day to day, you don't need dining for that many people, and you can do it in different ways. This is a great example of some people may not agree with every idea. I can see you have questions about what I suggested.
Well, I'm just trying to fit our current program into that model.
I know, yeah.
And,
And one way to do it is to go visit some senior centers that have that model and let you see that. And actually, a couple of years ago when we interviewed for the previous version of this, I got to see your senior center. The kitchen was a big part of that program, so that's why I was bringing that up again.
Gotta love folding tables.
Yeah.
and storage.
How do you work How do you work together with your team of subcontractors? Do you oversee their work and take responsibility for any mistakes they make?
Yes. We oversee their work and we're responsible for their work.
So you have a large number of subcontractors that you work with for the feasibility study as well as?
It depends on the particular site. If the site needs environmental because there were hazardous materials at one point, maybe there was oil dumped on the site and we need to study that, we would bring that consultant in. If we're in a deeply wooded site that hasn't been cleared for years, it will have what's called forest mat for the first layers of the soil. We may need to bring a geotechnical engineer in to understand how deep that forest mat is so that we can put in the budget enough money to remove that and not have it be a surprise after town meetings voted on the project and go, whoops, we didn't know that we were encountering this issue. So there's specialized consultants that come in as are needed. The traffic and parking consultant is always there on every site. The civil engineer to identify what site utilities are there and if they're not there, how long of a distance do we need to bring? I know one of your sites doesn't have water. How many feet do we have to run the water line down to get to that? Or if we're going to put a private well on for drinking water, how do we do that? It needs a 200-foot radius around it and other issues. So there are particular factors in each project and each site that may come into play that require consultants, and we'll bring those on as needed. But like I said, civil, landscape, architecture, and traffic are the basic ones that are on every project.
I'll try to get it back, but Zoom isn't to work. Remember, it's
Yeah, no, that's fine.
requirement of
That's
the
fine.
meeting.
Yep.
All right. How long would you anticipate a project like this to take? Sort of an open-ended
Yeah, no, I
question,
mean,
but
we like to do them in 6 months. I know you allocated 12 months for your timeline. It's a lot of energy for a committee to devote to a project. I'm really amazed at how much time people spend on these. So if we can get started and we break the project into sort of 2 steps. One is eliminate certain sites that we don't think are going to make sense through that evaluation criteria. And then once you do that, focus on 1 or 2 sites that make more sense and do a deeper dive into those. And that's the second half of it. So if you looked at it as a 6-month process, it's 2 or 3 months in the beginning to get through the initial analysis, and then to do the final analysis is another 3 months. A 12-month process may well be the case, but we don't want to get all of our information together and then dump it on the town right before town meeting.
Yep.
The idea is to get it together in the first 6 months and then let people digest it for the next 6 months and understand it and then ask questions and then go, well, yeah, that's a good point. Maybe we can refine that idea and help mold the project to one that voters will vote for.
excellent. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. That was, I think, all the questions, the formal questions. Did anyone have follow-up questions they wanted to ask?
Good follow-up question.
All right.
Or 2.
I have some slides too, if anybody wants to see them.
You did it so fast, I'll concentrate later on them.
No, I have additional ones that I was going to use for questions, but
I was going to get in a little bit to his estimate, if you don't mind, and the original allowances and so forth. So I saw that in your attachment A of the information that you sent us, that you had included, let's say, an estimate for your fee and plus the estimates of the other professionals that were going to be potentially involved. And I'm taking it to believe that depending on the site, that we may or may not need, control point, let's say. I'm just making a guess.
That's correct.
Okay, so at this point in time, depending on the extent of the site data analysis, or whatever the correct term was, you're gonna bring it, we're gonna be allowed under a budget, let's say, to bring in these types of engineers and geotechnical people and whatever, to take a look at the site. I think that's an advantage. I've been, talking about that myself, is, how important it is to do the engineering and whatnot, so. Getting to the question at the end is that you have an estimated cost of your fee as well. So do you feel comfortable that your fee would stay roughly in that bracket, included, and then?
Yeah. Well,
So you've got BH&A in here, that fee.
yeah.
Then you have consultants.
Yeah, no, I understand. The reason I did it that way was to, A, show you how it was broken out, but B, the way I read the RFP is that you may want to call on us. Lots of times we do the feasibility study. I got the impression that you wanted to call on us for specific tasks and maybe technical assistance, and then you could take that on, or if you don't need control point, we may need more environmental. This is what is the cap, and we have to move the fees around according to what we found at those 5 sites.
Okay, so it may only be 3 sites now, but that's okay. So that was what I was getting at. You clearly did a nice job of looking online and finding some of our old documents and some of the stuff we had done before, and saw the list of the sites. That's what you looked at. Plus you drove around the town, obviously. You looked at some of the things, which I thought was good. So what I'm getting at is we're better off, in your eyes, I guess, to look at the total estimate than we are to look at the individual pieces of the estimate.
That's correct.
That's what I thought. Because in the event that one doubled inside the list and another one was halved, it would potentially end up with the same total.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's the paperwork you submitted.
Right, yes.
Just to let everyone know.
Okay, any other questions? Any other closing things you'd like to say?
Do I have a few minutes?
Yeah.
Can I borrow the mouse and?
Sure.
I wanted to get to talk about the cost. It's really important to somehow understand what the voters' tolerance is, and that's sometimes we go into a project and they say, give us everything, this is our wish list, this is the one time we have to build the building, and then all of a sudden your project's $25 million and the voters don't want to get to that number. So what you can absorb as a community is important to understand. I don't have a silver bullet for doing that, but we try to approach that by addressing the numbers and being really rigorous about the cost estimate. So that's how we do the cost estimate. We do 2 estimates and then we reconcile them, and this just shows the accuracy of the cost estimate to the actual project, which is really important that our projects, when they're built, are built for the amount of money that you went to town meeting for. But it's not just a construction cost. You have to buy furniture, you have to buy audio-visual, you have soft costs and hard costs, so it's really imperative that we put together a good total project cost that covers all of your move costs, everything that's involved. And sometimes voters will say, okay, well, what's it going to cost me? I know how much it's going to cost me to build it, but what's it going to cost me year to year? We have a consultant that can work with us that we identify what your additional staff is. So when community senior centers add this big kitchen, they often don't have a chef. They have to add a chef to their payroll, maybe half-time, but what's the impact of that on the budget? What's the impact on commodities? You have a very small senior center, all of a sudden you're going to have 12 or 14,000 square foot to maintain. Let's understand what those are, and so that the voters understand that you're aware of the impact that this building is going to have on the bigger picture. And another way to offset that is through sustainability. The beauty of the new building codes is that we can reduce the energy demand, maximize your efficiency and make that building less expensive to operate to help mitigate some of those additional costs that you may have for additional staff. So the energy efficiency and the sustainability, this just shows for Newton, we took the existing senior center, their energy efficiency of 108, you don't have to know what that means, brought the new building down to 29. So it's basically a 75% reduction in energy costs.
Even though it's 3 times the size of the building.
Well, on a per square foot basis, yeah.
Yeah.
And then this sort of harkens back to your earlier question of how do you mitigate different opinions. At the end of designing Randolph, they said, you know, we'd really love to have a greenhouse, and we'd been working on the project for 6 months, but instead of saying no, one of our architects found this prefab greenhouse in California that could just be attached to our building, $50,000, unheated space. I actually think that's a little revenue center. I don't know what they're growing on the side there, but I think it's high revenue. But it's that point of, you know, being flexible and being accommodative. And when you said what are some of the exciting programs, I couldn't really explain it, but the upper left is a new arts and crafts room. It's a digital arts and crafts room as opposed to the old-fashioned arts and crafts room. So it's got 3D printers, it has all sorts of modern technology. Next to it's the quilting room, but this is that idea of designing for the next generation. The upper right image is that cafe at Falmouth where people can take their lunches and has TV, go outside to the outdoors. And that lower left is the Needham kitchen with the training teaching island in the middle of it. Just a few images I wanted to get to help explain those topics that we had. The last point I'll make is it's not necessarily bad to do something purpose-built. The pool room on the upper right is the men's cave. It's a little bit different than the one on the upper left, which is a flexible room. But, you know, maybe there's a reason to have something very special to help attract different demographics and different users to the building. Those are the kind of things that we want to discuss with you. Purpose-built, flexible, you know, how do we go about designing and accommodating your citizens?
Where's the bar? I didn't see a bar.
Little kegerator under the counter.
Gotta have one in the kitchen. Everybody knows the cooks like to drink.
There's that walking track. Everybody.
Where I get excited.
That's very nice.
All right, so I appreciate the opportunity to show those slides.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I appreciate your time.
We all done?
We're all set. Thank you so much for your
Got his
time
thumb drive
tonight.
up there too.
Yeah, pop that up.
Do we, yeah. that's helpful.
All right.
Well, thank you. I'd love
Thank
to
you
work
very
with
much.
you.
Thanks,
and
Joel. Appreciate it.
Great town.
Thank you. It's nice to meet you so much.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
I know it's a hard decision because I know John's next. No shortage of good architects.
Make sure you trip him on the way, when he's on his way in.
Deliberations, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm stuck on wires.
Let me straightening out something here. The AV system is getting straightened out here.
Somehow managed
Grab him.
to
Ready for
tie
him?
up my,
He's
Yes, that'd be great.
next, oh my God.
Welcome, have a seat here at the end of the table. We might need to pull up more chairs if we need to.
Bring up more chairs.
We can bring it, we don't bite.
Well, come join. You sure you don't?
No,
I've been told otherwise. Joel was complaining when it.
I don't bite, I just
Joel
stab.
was complaining when he came out. Tried not to make his bruises visible.
That's right, rolled up newspaper, a little bit of water, goes a long way.
I did bring a, somebody said you had a,
Somebody like.
something, this thing up there that I could put a little, we had a very brief little show and tell with pretty pictures.
Give the good looking
Everything
dad
Dan?
the stuff.
Yeah, Joe, we get that.
The professional looking
Young
guy.
one.
Get you in.
And I wave my hand and it changes. Can you run either PowerPoint or a PDF? It's either one.
Okay.
If you can do PowerPoint, it's a little bit.
Yeah, it's probably better.
And my other handout is.
Is it signed in case?
Yeah, I don't know. There's one other thing we want. He's looking for that. I didn't put anything secret up there. What was that? You know? Can I see that far? You know? You find us up there?
Again.
This is why I love technology. It seems to like it. Well, let's do the stormwater one. Here,
Wait a
oh,
minute.
BH plus A's there. Where do we show up?
What's going on here?
Does that have an HDMI on it? I'll just plug my computer into it.
Yeah, it does.
It does? Oh,
Yeah, we could do
Let me
that.
just do that. We don't want to hold you up too long.
I can slide around to the side here if he wants to put it here.
Yeah.
File, but it's holding the other guy's file.
Where's the HDMI?
Here, I have it.
Oh, recent files. Okay,
Somewhat.
it's not on the
I don't know why that
It's
is.
not.
I just ran that on my computer, so I know it was working good. Yeah,
Interesting how it did that.
Yeah, hold on a minute.
I don't think there is one.
There's gotta be one.
I mean, there has to be one. It's just a matter of where.
Yeah, there's some stuff here.
See, I don't see,
Oh.
on this side, I don't see it.
It's USB.
You know where it's wasn't recognized.
Huh. Let me look at the ones over there too. You're probably right.
That goes to that
USB port then.
TV.
Are they still here? She got one.
Where's that one come in?
If it's there, it's not sealable.
Again, what are we?
Well, it's part of the fun.
It sounds like it's
It does
accepting it.
recognize.
Well, you know what he did? Joel probably put a little bug in there to prevent our control.
Seriously? Yeah.
There, find it?
No.
No.
This piece should be, listen, it should be further down.
Yeah. Should be.
Well, maybe it's,
It was coming up right below C drive before. There's nothing else to scroll down. This PC.
Is there another USB?
HDMI.
Is there another USB port?
This goes into this. Okay, up here's the HDMI.
oh, yeah. That's all right. One last try.
think we
If it doesn't work, I'll fake it.
Let me take a look. I think you can put it in here.
Yeah?
Put it right here? Oh, yeah, look at that.
Oh, yeah, but I
Try that.
Oh,
Because I just, that's what goes over to there.
Oh, gotcha. Oh, that's good.
I don't know if this will work.
what the heck?
Oh, shit, you can plug the other one.
Now, is it gonna pop up on here or not?
Well, let's see what happens, you know?
I'm just gonna swivel
You'll
this
see a
way then
picture
so I can see if
Of my
that's-
dog, I think, to show you to get us going on this, right?
It sounds like it likes it,
Yeah.
but then it,
Do you want to stretch to here?
Yeah, I will. I have eyes behind my head, so I can see what I'm doing. Let's see what happens. Does that show up?
You need to unplug the,
I know, now I'm not, because that's sending the signal out, and we're trying to go in.
Oh, it's going the other way, yeah. Because
Yeah,
it's reporting
right,
that
it was
way.
heading out
Yeah,
there.
so that's not an input.
Yeah, it's an output. But
Projecting to this piece.
generally,
It should see that USB drive.
yeah, I don't see a
These are all
USB.
ins over here.
Where does this one plug into?
It's up top there? Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Well,
These are all ins over here.
Dan, are you tall enough?
Do this.
but that's not an HDMI. That's a square.
Yeah, those are
No, okay,
USBs.
sorry, my bad, I thought that one wasn't.
You want to try a different USB?
Everything's got to work.
Try a different USB port, see if that might work.
Yeah.
Some might not take data transfer.
There it is.
There it is. Yeah.
You get this, you
Who said try something different? He gets the raise. Shit, I don't know how that happened. He gets the day off. Dan, I'm always complaining about that. You'll have to, I'll let you put this back together
Yeah,
again.
exactly.
All right.
Are you prevailing
Oh, so
wage?
cute.
Prevailing wage.
Yeah, you want to
can't
drive?
raise it from
Yeah, I can
prevailing
drive
wage.
it. I'll drive it.
That's the
There you go.
Thank you. All right, this is going to be quicker than usual. If you notice, we put our names on our outfits, so we'll introduce ourselves. I'm John, Barbara, I have to look at the names, Jamie, and Dan. And we'll get into all the excitement a little bit
It's a
later.
mouse.
So I'd like,
Leave it on the ground, on the table.
You went, you clicked
oh yeah, go back one.
No hand on that.
back with a mouse.
There you go. Yeah, well,
Like if you click, it's gonna go. Oh, wait,
go back
okay.
there.
Yeah, there you
Okay.
go. Scroll.
so, I got it.
Sit.
So here we go. Sit. Yeah, thank you. This is our team, and who you see here is all but Kelly. This is our entire office. When you call us, you'll get us. I stay involved in all the projects. Dan and I, and Jamie and Barbie. Barbie is our technical person with the software stuff. Dan is the project manager with me, and Jamie is our office manager. She keeps me honest. And Kelly's not here. Kelly is one of our members, 5 years in the firm, and she is a quadriplegic, a little hard to get around. So. All right, so I'm going to quickly go through the most recent projects. This is just recently finished in North Andover. It's about a 14,000 square foot center. And I'm just going to show you some of the images. If there's anything that you see that you want to talk about later, certainly you can ask us about it. But this is some of the interiors. Long Meadow is another one that's just recently finished. This one was done with a gymnasium, but it's a 17,000 square foot senior center with a 11,000 square foot gym on it. So if you take the gym off, that's the senior center. And it's in a park. And in a lot of these, you'll see we're going to leave behind with you one of my lectures that I do from Mass Council on Aging, and it goes through the details of how we design these buildings. And this is a cafe, it's right at the entrance, and I don't, do I push it this way? No, this way. I'm learning. Multi-purpose room, which has a performance stage in it. This room right now is lit all with natural light. We have skylights up in the ceiling, a lot of lighting. We have shades that can darken it. And at night, we have the hanging pendants. And you can see up above a lot of the transparency that we have that connects all the different spaces together. So you visually see how they're all operating from wherever we are in the building. In this case, this was a walking track and gymnasium, which has volleyball, pickleball, and what's the other? Basketball. And outside, there's 4 other pickleball courts. Full fitness facility, game room, lounge, library. Down in the lower right side is a teaching kitchen. And what we do there is that we bring in outside, when I say we, it's a royal we. We bring in outside chefs from local restaurants, and they talk about their menu and how you cook it, and it's mostly helping people learn how to cook for smaller, 2 people or less. There's
there's the library. So there's noisy areas and quiet areas. This is the latest one. It just had a soft opening on the 18th of March. This is Wilbraham. It's a 15,600 square foot senior center. Just now opening, but not quite 100%. We're going through the punch list right now. And that's the before. That's the rendering done by yours truly, Barbie. And this is it built. We changed the color. And you can see here, there's a trellised area. When it's up and running in the summer, that's an outside cafe that connects to the cafe inside. And there's a drop-off area there. And a little bit farther here, you can see the fitness room, the multi-purpose room. You see a lot of transparency with different spaces looking down into these different, so you see how everybody's working. The one on the lower left that's a quilting class. That's a double-sized classroom with a divided wall that allows you to be broken down into two parts. And then over on the right is a bocce ball court. And by the way, that's a golf course in the background, which is really nice. Good for walking. The game room, billiards, the cafe, which connects outside to that trellis area, the arrival point where we have digital screens to help tell you what's going on in the building, the library lounge, which is double-sided with a fireplace, very popular spot. And that is it. I wanted to be quick because I want to leave it to you guys to ask us what else we do wrong or right. And I'm going to leave up our names and who we are. And I did bring with me, oh, there it is.
Jamie grabbed it, or Dan.
This is the presentation I just did. I'm going to leave it with you. And these are two example studies, which I have to take back. We only have one of each. And this can stay with you. That's a typical lecture program that I do at MCOA.
I actually have that.
Oh, you have that? Oh, what's that?
I attended your lecture at the last MCOA meeting.
Oh, good. I'm glad somebody went to it.
Yes. It was a packed house. Give yourself credit.
Yeah, I think we have about 40 or 50 people that come every year.
Yeah.
We call it Swellesley.
It's plenty of money there.
Yeah.
All right, so we have 7 predetermined questions for you guys, and then conversation can flow from there. Where were we asking the first question? Was it?
Did you ask?
I asked the last, we were over to Dave.
Okay, all right, so Dave.
Does your firm have any preferences for a senior center design with the entire building on one floor, or can a satisfactory design of a senior center be accomplished with a building on 2 floors?
Well, it depends upon the size, okay? If you're less than 10,000 square feet, generally a single-story building works pretty well, but almost all of our projects are in excess of 10,000 square feet. We highly recommend 2 stories. You'll be familiar, if you're familiar with Ludlow, they built a 20,000 square foot center on one level. And it's really worth visiting to understand the difference between that and if you go to, let's say, Wilbraham or Longmeadow. The one thing about 2 stories is that the first time I said this to a group, they looked at me like, oh, this is for elders, old people. We're not all old. And one of the most important things about the National Council on Aging recommends that we walk 7 to 10 flights of stairs a day to stay flexible, keep your ankles moving, your knees working. And if you can't walk the stairs, right next to it, I had one of the pictures up there, is an elevator, because obviously an elevator is required for ADA accessibility. And generally it's a one-stop elevator. And the other thing I'd like to also say about a 2-story building is that actually it's less expensive if you're over 10,000 square feet to build 2 stories. And a lot of people say, well, gee, you got an elevator, you have stairs, but what you don't have is that if you look at Ludlow is 20,000 square feet. The foundation's 20,000 square feet. The slab is 20,000 square feet. The roof is 20,000 square feet. The number one heat loss in the building is the roof. So if you got a 20,000 square foot roof versus an 8,000 square foot or a 6,000 square foot, your actual heat loss is less. And the most expensive thing about your building, when you're all done, the hardest part is getting the money to build it. But the real hard part is operating it. So it's twice as expensive to operate a poorly designed building over a 40 or 50-year span than it is to build it. So it's much more expensive to operate down the road. And your greatest expense, no matter how well the building is built, is operation. And to give you an idea, Long Meadow, North Andover, and Wilbraham, our ceilings are R60, which is the rating for heat loss. Our walls are R40. All the lighting inside is LED, and we use VRF for the HVAC system. The higher the insulation, the more we spend on it, but the smaller your mechanical systems are, and the less expensive it is to run it. So I hope that wasn't too long. We recommend 2 stories if it's the right size. Under 10,000 square feet, the economics don't work.
Great, thanks. Next one.
Okay. Can you give us an idea of your opinion on the importance of the location of a senior center within a small town like Ayer? In other words, we're asking, is there a general preference to be closer to the center of town or within a number of miles of the center of town, or is it a factor in your mind?
Well, we all have worked on different towns with different siting abilities. And one of the issues here is that obviously the familiar location is really important. But what happens, what ultimately decides, are those the questions?
Yeah.
What happens is that, to give you an idea, in Duxbury, we had, I think, 16 or 17 sites. And we went all over the place, looking at everything. Some were easily to dismiss, others were a lot better. And the last day of going around looking at sites, we were driving by the fire station on Route 3A. And I said, wow, right across from the fire station, there's this big open area with some trees on it. What's that? Oh, that's owned by the cemetery. Really? Well, in the end, because of the way people are being buried these days, the cemetery had all this extra land, and they weren't going to be using it because of cremation. So, and by the way, the cemetery was not right in front of you, it was off. We ended up building our building on that site, 7 acres. And it was really interesting. And Wilbraham, we looked for 6 years at different sites. Everything from playing fields, which are really difficult to take, as you probably have learned here. And so we ended up, they discovered, the building inspector says, you know, right behind Town Hall, adjacent to the golf course, we have this big empty piece of land. And by the way, it's right near wetlands, so it complicated it a bit. So we said, wow, you know, that's Town Hall. Everybody knows what Town Hall is. And here we could build this building there. So we started on that, only discovered to the chagrin of the town administrator that they had leased this empty parcel to the golf course. And the golf course was being run as a private club that you join, but on leased town land. And it sounds a little bit like your Peroni Park issue. It was touch and go there because they were concerned about hitting seniors with golf balls, because I guess they're not real good players there. We had consultants come in and talk about 60-foot high fences and all this stuff. In the end, it got built, it got approved by the board, the town adjusted the property, and we built this, which you saw up there, senior center, right along the golf course, which is a wonderful opportunity because one of the key things about growing older is exercise, and the golf course is available for walking. And we haven't been, so far nobody's been prosecuted for trespassing, but it's great in the off-season too. Hopefully that gave you an idea. The sites are really challenging. And you'll see in that book there that I handed out, you'll see we have a matrix in there of how you select a site. It's both subjective and objective. We look at sites, and I think the example in there might be 10 sites on a particular town. And we look at hydrology, topography, who owns the site, zoning issues. Is it on town sewer or is it septic? What kind of water source? Do you have to get a public water supply or do you have water? We go through that whole matrix, and everybody on the committee and stakeholders in town, if necessary, will apply a value to each one of those issues that's listed. I think there's like 12 or 14 of them. And we go across those sites and then we add it up down the bottom, and it very quickly tells you what really is the positive sites out of that. And I think in our study there in that book, it says we came up with 3 sites out of like 10 or 12. And then that helps it's a tough time to make a decision. Size of the site, geographic location, I think you mentioned, is it easy to be found? We did a project in a town where we had a beautiful, is that the matrix? Yeah, there's the matrix.
It's pretty extensive.
What happens, we found a beautiful site. It was donated. It was a former hunting lodge. Gorgeous, but it was right on the Wellesley line. And there's a certain animosity between Wellesley and this other community. They didn't get along well. They didn't like the idea that they'd be so close to Wellesley that Wellesley might be using their senior center. That site was perfect. It was beautiful, but it did not get selected. It ended up more in the center of town for good reason. But those are the kinds of things you run in. There's political issues and there's physical issues of the site that makes the difference.
Traffic is a big one.
Yeah. Well, Wellesley is a good example. We interviewed for Wellesley for the feasibility study. We did not get it. It went to a competitor of mine who I know quite well. And it was right on Route 16. And it was on a very small site. And when we interviewed, we said, this site is too small. You have to acquire there's an adjacent apartment building, small. And the architect that was selected did not push that issue. And they ended up with parking across the street over by the fire station. Well, the street happens to be Route 16. Have you ever been on Route 16? You don't cross that street, much less have elders having to cross the street. And the design, because it was so small, the design had the building right here, and you had to drive in behind the building because of where the door was, drop somebody off, and then have to go back on the 16 to go back onto the site, the park. And so it fell apart during town meeting. It came back out, we had a chance to re-interview, and we gave them a full design, which I think is in that book. And we won the project. And I reminded the committee that 5 years before we had interviewed with the same design. And they said, oh, we missed that. Well, that happens. But that site was very challenging. That's a 12,800 square foot building, 2 stories. By the way, the footprint, the size of the site really makes a difference. If the site's tight, 2 stories is really important. And we squeezed that down, and we ended up with 35 parking spaces for a 12,000 square foot building.
And circulation on site too.
Yeah, and we circulate on site, we don't have to leave, but if I had my way, we needed 50 parking spaces. But we bought the lot next door in Swellesley, we call it, $1.2 million to buy this little 20,000 square foot. But it made all the difference in the world. It completely made the project work. So siting is really challenging and fun. Believe it or not, it is fun.
We know a little about it.
So as a public building, and you're obviously familiar with, there are going to be many particular interests seeking to have their ideas implemented. How do you navigate conflicts between competing interests while maintaining the architectural and design integrity of the structure?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we're well familiar with that. To give you an idea, Wilbraham, which is just opening, I hope you get a chance, whether you pick us or not, please go by and see it. Paula is the director there. That's a 2-story building because the site's tight. We have about how many parking spaces we have there? About 100?
99.
99 parking spaces. And it's about 15,000 square feet. And then we have overflow to the, for special events, to the town hall parking spaces, which we're not counting. That building, there's a big push, and I notice there's always a concern whether you're doing a wood frame building or a steel building. And my contractors, if they have a choice, they're going to pick on a large building. When I say large, 15,000 square feet, they're going to pick steel. Steel is not necessarily cheaper, but the labor, they can erect that building in 10 days. If you're building in wood, it's going to be 3 weeks, maybe longer. And if you're paying your union, your wage rates, I think the carpenter's now $100 an hour. So, and by the way, steel is not a file sub-bid, what carpentry is. So those are issues that come to play. So when we go to work with the budgeting, that's really a trick. And there's a real push by the OPM on that project to do it in wood. And in the end, it was steel. And 2 things that come out of that. We built lots of, Belmont was built in wood. It really, a lot of it has to do with where the economy is and what's, for a while there, steel tripled, but then a 2x4 went from $1.80 to $6. So you ran into a lot of this maneuvering around and how you work out your budget. In the end, that building is steel. If a tornado went by, the building isn't going to go anywhere. But what's really important, have you seen that? But what's really important is that when activities are going on in the building, you have no idea that there's an aerobics class on the 2nd floor because we have concrete decks and a lot of acoustical control that we can get in a steel building that we can't get in a wood building. So they both have their positives, but there we had a real struggle, and in the end, when it was steel, we've got nothing but compliments out of it. The other issues are really the biggest job every town has is selling this to the town. And we highly recommend that you have stakeholder meetings, neighborhood meetings. The quicker you can show people what you're doing, the faster they can argue against it or put their input in. But once you get people putting in their input, they become ownership of the project. And part of our whole deal is explaining to people why. A lot of people don't understand why 2 stories is really good for seniors versus 1 story. Or whether a cafe, which connects to the front door and goes outside, is a great drop-off point for people to come in and sit down and have a cup of coffee with a friend before they go in and do a program, or they just come by to meet with their buddies and then leave afterwards. There's 3 key things for designing these particular centers: socialization, nutrition, and exercise. And if we do all 3 of those in our community, we end up with a much healthier population over 60. I still play squash twice a week for an old guy, you know.
And when we visit the centers, we see a lot of people preferring the stairs.
Yeah, in fact, we did a study in Holyoke, which is a 20,000 square foot center. We did a study there, and 87% of everybody who used that building used the stairs. And part of that is that our stairs, 6-inch risers. Not, the legal one is 7 1/4. That's too much.
8 in Massachusetts.
Yeah, 6-inch. You like 6-inch.
8.
So we do 6-inch risers. We also put an edge on the risers. So we have both a luminescent edge and a abrasive black edge. So when I'm walking down the stairs, if I have macular degeneration or any kind of vision issues, I can see the edge of the stair. There's a brand new senior center. I won't say where it is because some of the competition is responsible for it. The stairs are all oak. They're all the same color all the way down. I can't see the edge. At my house, I'm on a 3-level house. I'm up and down the stairs. My last riser in every single stair has got a luminescent edge on it. So when I go down at night, I don't miss the last step, which before that I did. Grabbing the newel post in the dark is difficult. But when you design these things, and you'll see it in the big book, there's a lot of very important issues, and stairs is one of them. So I don't know whether that really answered. If you want to come back to that question.
Well, I was
I get excited.
He went on to the next
my
question
teen years,
already.
they start kicking me under the table.
You went to the next question already.
Oh, I did? What was that?
That's fine.
No, try me out.
Top 3 most important considerations when you encourage a building design.
How do you navigate
Well-
conflicts between competing interests?
Yeah.
So like on
Well, we did that.
Wilbraham,
Yeah, well,
and even North Andover's second floor, they wanted to redesign.
yeah.
Kind of just have to guide
We worked
people
our way
with
through it.
the education.
A good example is double doors. Never do double doors for the seniors. And I learned this recently with our quadriplegic Kelly. And I've always been a single door guy, and I'll tell you why. Double doors are 3 foot each, all right? And if you go to a center, I don't care whose building it is, one door is almost always locked. Because, you know,
It's not supposed to be, it's a fire hazard.
well, if you,
Supposed to be
if you
unlocked.
meet, if you meet the right width. So even if they don't lock it, if you have a power opener, if both doors open and the next double door is open and we're in New England and we're in the middle of a snowstorm, you got a blizzard inside the building. So what I really discovered is that ADA says 3'6" doors, which are 32-inch clear. That's not wide enough for the new wheelchair. My quadriplegic lady, Kelly, she can't get through an ADA compliant door with her hands on the side of her. Her wheelchair has batteries on it. And the other issue too is that, quite honestly, 32 inches is not acceptable for the wheelchair and also for
Walkers.
Walkers. Thank you. That's what I brought you along. So we recommend a 3'6" door. And a lot of people say, what, you know? But it really, when you see them in operation, you'll see it in our last 3 centers, they're all 3'6". In fact, the project we finished in Lexington, Kentucky, which is a 45,000 square foot center, all the doors throughout the center are 3'6", just to make it. And by the way, it's not hard to open them because the new ADA requirements, they can't have more than, I think, 4 pounds of pressure. So all the closers work with that. And the bathrooms now you use infrared. You can swing your hand by and it'll open the door for you. I think something happens here. I walked up, the door was open for me. I'm surprised. Yeah. In fact, only 4 years ago, there were push buttons. And let me tell you about a quad. A quad has a hard time pushing those buttons, but she can wave her hand and that door opens.
So a lot of the conflicting interests is through miseducation. So we educate them with the reasons we're choosing what we're choosing, why we're choosing the doors, why we're doing this with the stairs. Just educating. And sometimes people win. A lot of the ones they win on are colors.
Well,
It's not a big deal.
To be honest with you, to be right up front about it, in Ludlow, I know Jody quite well, the director there. She's a lovely lady. We're big fans. We worked a lot with her. We did not get that job because they wanted to do a 20,000 square foot single story building. And if you look down that hallway is over 130 feet, I think we measured it, 130 feet long. If my mother arrived at that hallway and there's an event at the end of that hallway and she has her walker, not going to go to that. Our centers, when you go to see them, they're almost all very open plan. When you go in, everything's right there. And the rooms that have to be closed, like classrooms, has a lot of glass. So you see a lot of transparency. And what's really great about that is because a lot of the new older seniors are a little shy, they don't feel comfortable, but when you see a friend in a quilting class or a painting class, I might try that, so the transparency is really important. And especially on very large centers, because at the end of the day, you want to make sure everybody's out, and you can see that very quickly in the room. There's a lot of glass.
So you're the maintenance guy and you have to wash all that freaking glass.
No fingerprints are allowed.
It's fingerproof proof. Design.
Keep the kids out.
Yeah. Well, we let kids in, they're nice. Yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
You ready for our next question?
Yeah, wait.
These are kind of all combining together.
When choosing a site for a senior center, what do you see as the top 3 most important considerations?
We did that.
I think that you're down to number 5 now.
Kind of.
Oh, sorry.
He morphed into
He
it.
morphed into that one, so you can.
I'm sorry, I apologize. I'll be asking to answer a different way.
Yeah.
Forgive them on the questions.
The question, whatever. The question is a little bit different than never mind.
We're unconventional. I apologize.
What are your guiding principles in terms of design and program content for the senior centers you've worked on? And what is your vision for a successful senior center that meets the needs of its varied users?
Our first senior center we designed was in 1987 in Winthrop, Massachusetts. And since then, we've designed or have done studies for about 60 to 65 centers, of which maybe 30, 35 have been built. In the town of Belmont, which was now 15 years ago, we came up with a new concept, if you will. If you go look at a lot of senior centers, they have hallways, everything's behind a door. If you go to, I know they're not interviewing, so I can bring this up. In Chicopee, they have a room for puzzles. You go in a room, the door, go in, sit down, work on a puzzle. We figured out that about a third to 40% of the senior center is open, can be open concept. So when you come into like Holyoke, you come into what we call the high energy space, which is the reception area. They have My Senior Center consoles up, and some of the bigger centers will have multiple ones. People come in, they're all meeting, maybe there's a big event, maybe it's going to be at lunch or a special aerobics class. There's a lot of chatting going on. We figured out that you could move out of that space to a little bit quieter space, what we call a conversation space, where you can sit down by the fireplace and some comfortable chairs. And by the way, we can talk about seating too, it's a big deal. You can sit down and carry on a conversation, but you're not right in all that activity of people standing around. And then just beyond that, we create, and you'll see in our last 5 or 6 centers, we have an open separation, fireplace, higher bookcases. On the other side of that is what we call the quiet space. If you go to Holyoke, there's a morning netting group that sits in there and they chat and they net inside the fireplace. Or there's some folks sitting around playing backgammon or checkers or cribbage, and they're having quiet conversation. So we have a zone, noisy, not too noisy, and quiet, all open. You can look all the way from the lobby all the way to the library, but they're separated out. And we have special acoustical systems. If you walk in our centers, we have a lot of coffered ceilings, and in those ceilings we have what we call high NRC ceiling tiles. It's noise reduction coefficient. We use only 0.95 ceiling tiles. In this room, they're probably 0.6 or less. It's not enough. We're fuzzy in here, so we absorb a lot. But often we go like this, and there's a lot of reverberation. The real issue for us elders as we grow older is that we cannot hear well with high-frequency background noise. So we want to reduce that noise way down. So we do that through the open space planning, where we separate out spaces where people who need more quiet can be in those. And then what happens there is that if you walk into Holyoke, you see a large monumental stair going to the next floor. It welcomes people to the next floor. And what we do at the next floor is our big mistake years ago in Duxbury is that we put all the classrooms on the second floor. They were quiet and dark and not many things happened. What we discovered by the time we did Belmont and Holyoke is that we put the game room up there, we put the computer space, fitness up there. We actually have a band room in Holyoke. They have 50 guys up there, ladies playing. It takes people up. So the energy of the building now becomes not horizontal, but vertical. And so open plan is the thing we discovered in our process of working with directors, that the open plan really changed the way these buildings are perceived and used. And so when you go and see these, and I highly recommend, certainly if you can do this before you make a decision, go look at a couple of these centers, not just ours. I mean, we think ours are terrific, but there's some good examples of what you should not do and what you can do. And that's part of that process. I wander on too far.
And well, the feeling of success that comes from that is we see the rate of attendance going up significantly after these new centers are built, not only just because of the space.
We find that parking is never adequate. In Duxbury, we had one select person in favor, nobody on the finance committee. In the town meeting, we had elders standing up saying, why do we need this? It's just for poor people. Just for poor. That's so BS.
Somebody said that?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I can tell you some worse. Greedy old geezers, they refer to us sometimes. But it's just for poor people, because we all go to Florida. Well, let me tell you a secret. My mother's very well off. She grew up in a community that didn't have a senior center. And she sat in her library every day and read biographies. She was loved reading biographies. But she didn't physically get out and move. And by 81, she couldn't even do the stairs down into her garage because she was not doing movement. Mm-hmm. And these centers, I can go on and on. That's a 4-hour lecture, that book. So. But these centers are about making our communities more aware of how important it is for our elders to age properly, both physically through exercise, socially through engagement, and nutritionally through food. All our centers serve food. A lot of them teach how to cook. The classes in Long Meadow are packed. They're just very successful. So I'm gone now. Shut up. Just hit me.
So how do you work together with your team of subcontractors? Do you oversee their work and take responsibility for any mistakes that they make?
You better believe it. To give you an idea of my cost estimator, I've been working with him for 45 years. I worked with his boss. He then took over the company. Fogarty, I don't know whether you know Fogarty. If you do much municipal work, he does everybody. Jim DeVellis at DZI is our civil engineer. He did Wellesley, he didn't do Walpole because that was a brownfield site. That was a W.R. Gray site. So somebody spent $25 million cleaning it before we put the senior center on it. But and we used a local guy who was doing that. But he's done, just finished Wilbraham. This is a complicated site because of wetlands. So we work very closely. Our structural engineers.
These are our
oh, here we are.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's right. You figured that out for you. This is our list. All these people, VAV, our MEP, fire protection, we've been working with them for 25, 30 years.
They've all been in the field for decades.
Yeah, and they've done our centers over and over again. And every once in a while, we have to whack them in the head when they get something wrong. But we have a beam in the wrong place in Wilbraham.
for
But
sure.
nobody would ever know it.
It's not your gut fix.
We probably
Dan's got it right there. Well, how did, what's the matter? They couldn't read the plans? How did they put it in the wrong place?
What's really great about our team is that this group has been working with us on the last 10, 15, some going back maybe everything we've done in working with elders. And by the way, you should understand that you go to our website, I've not looked at it at all, but I understand there's a lot of senior centers on it. That's what we do. We design for elders. And we design for the youngest elders and the most senior, older elders. When you go to, we don't use ceramic tile on our floors anywhere for two reasons. One, we know statistically when an elder falls,
It hurts.
you have a 30% greater chance of breaking something. And the number one cause of accidental death amongst elders is falling. So we don't want to have, when you fall on carpet, believe it or not, or even linoleum, it's less dangerous for an elderly person than it is on ceramic tile. And the other problem with ceramic tile is it's never perfect. So when you go to, let's say, Long Meadow, you'll see a pattern, because part of what's really important is that wayfinding is critical. So when you're walking, I learned this way back, maybe 30 years ago at a class where they took Vaseline and put it on the glasses and put it on us and said, okay, walk across the room. It's a great big, like 4,000 square foot room with a monochromic floor. And almost all of us went this way or that way, depending on which leg was broken last. But when you have a pattern of about 20% differentiating in terms of darkness and lightness, that pattern allows you to find your way along. The other thing that's really cool is that there's a whole lot of new senior centers out there that have nursing home railing in them, down the hallway. They actually took them out in Ludlow, thank God, but they started out with those. Young seniors look at that and say, it's a senior, it's a nursing home, it's not going to come in. We disguise that. We do wainscoting, it's decorative, black cherry, maple. And we have a little lip that comes out that looks part of the deck, the interior design, if you will. That lip is your setting. You can rest your hand on it. Just like a nursing home rail. And nobody knows it's there, except for the person that needs it. So those are the kinds of things that we smuggle in. And but lighting is really critical too. We need roughly 40% more light to see properly than somebody who's 25 years old. That's why my mother always told me when I was a teenager, would you drive the car, please? It's raining and dark. I said, what's wrong, Mom? Well, now I fully understand.
Can I make a quick comment on what you had said? Because you said, how can they put the beam in the wrong place? Surprisingly enough, a lot of these people on these projects cannot read drawings properly. And we only do weekly site visits for the most part. So it's
But when that came up,
management team.
I was called.
Immediately addressed.
We were immediately addressed and we figured it out, and we just had a little bit
But
more fun.
we are very big on coordination, and today now, everything's coordinated in 3 dimension. Yes. Everything's in
Project management software.
I worked on a job where the architect put a skylight and he put a structural beam right through the middle of the skylight.
Oh, cool.
It's like we put the building up and we're like,
The
that
beam,
doesn't
yeah.
work. So
Did he explain
it took 3 weeks of special, they had to go back to the factory, remake, double up the headers on either side, put headers on either side of it and bolt it back together again.
We send our structural engineer our model of our design, so he can look at it and say, okay, and then we coordinate with his
I go back and
3D
forth
model
with it a lot.
and ours and make sure that things like that don't happen.
There's one sneaky beam got in the way. And actually, we were able to resolve it like a good carpenter, but by the way, the builder in Wilbraham has been fabulous. P&P Construction out of Charlton. understand that public bid is low bid moves. In Wilbraham, the low bidder that we had a lot of trouble with in Longmeadow withdrew.
That was through the whole COVID mess,
Yeah.
though. That was when everything
Yeah.
was
We're
fluctuating.
bidding, there's nothing worse than what happened through COVID in terms of supply chain. We have a contractor who's always been a really good one. He built Wellesley for us. He's been absolutely murdered in North Andover. And I can't help him because it's public bid. My responsibility is the taxpayer and my client. I can't value engineer it for the contractor. You wished we could, but
And he is an advocate to fight for whatever our client is, what they deserve, need, and what he agreed to in the beginning to make sure it doesn't, because there are people that slide things.
we spent almost all our projects are Massachusetts public bid.
Okay.
99%.
Next committee question. How long do you anticipate the project to take?
How long do you want it to take?
2 weeks tomorrow.
To be fair about it, it all depends upon how many sites. Now, you were looking at multiple sites. It was great when I went over and looked at Peronia Park and said, wow, lose the baseball field, it's perfect, wonderful. Because, we built Long Meadow right in the middle of the park. And we took out the tennis courts. And we built it there. And we're able to do it because there had been a school on the site and there's a community pool. And because of that, chapter, what is it? 97 was able to be dealt with quickly because they had already used the park for some public use. I believe your housing is that way.
So did we.
I know, but
We use it for the Council of Aging.
But I think you ran into a little other roadblock.
People just didn't
too.
understand it, too complicated.
There used to be a school there.
Used to be a school.
Yeah, I know. Technically,
That knows that.
I'm not advocating it. Technically, you could pull it off, but it would be painful. Because you have.
We can't even consider it. This committee was told not to even look
Let's
at
talk
it.
about that.
So go to the next slide, please.
We are fully aware of the situation. We know that that's, it's
We had a
not on the book.
number of projects that were on parks that got, because it's a very, listen, the secret in this world is never take away a playing field.
Yeah.
I don't care where it is, just don't take it away.
But
Or replicate it.
in short, on average, our studies run about 4 to 6 months, on average,
Yeah.
depending on the complexity.
We can do it quicker.
All right.
I'll tell you one thing, because we understand the programming, we can program very quickly. And programming is what it comes down to, but the real thing is introducing the community to it. You have to get the community involved. And you gotta get early in the design, talking about the programming, so you ask the community, we do surveys,
There's an example in the Montague
Yeah.
study of a
Survey
that went
Monkey,
out.
I think they called that Survey Monkey or something like that. And we write the survey, and what happens is we send it out to everybody in the community, often at tax time, or you can pick them up at the library or town hall. And what happens is that everybody says, oh, this is what they're doing. And it's a PR piece. You're selling what you're trying to do to the community. And you're introducing it to both young parents, who maybe have older parents, but you also, by the way, we get blowback from seniors too, because they're afraid of tax issues. And the one amazing thing, I live in New Hampshire right now. Our offices used to be in Massachusetts for a long time. New Hampshire doesn't care about seniors. They really don't. Go find a senior center in New Hampshire. Massachusetts cares. A lot of other communities, we worked on a big 30,000 square foot one in Tallahassee, Florida. A lot of communities care, but Massachusetts truly cares. And what's great for Massachusetts and what's great for your community is you can show examples. and you can actually bring some people in to talk to our community, from their community, about what a difference it's made in their community. And when you hear it from the mouth of somebody, like we always like to say in this process, we'd like to take you all on a tour, not just ours, but lots of senior centers, to see what works and what doesn't. And we allow you to go and chat with the directors without us present. Because, you know, if I'm president, oh wait, what is she saying? Or what is he saying? No, you get it from the horse's mouth. They'll tell you what they like and what they don't like. And that's how we learn. Our centers have changed dramatically because of what we learned from the people we work with. And that's why for the last 10 years or 15 years I've been lecturing. I didn't lecture this year in MCOA because Kathy Bowler, I don't know if anybody knows Kathy, she was the director for Holyoke. And then she became the liaison for MCOA throughout the state. She retired last year, and she's always the one that bugs me about, make sure you get your proposal in, and I missed it this year. So I'll be better next year. But
it's your office manager's fault.
It is. Thank God.
I'll throw her under the bus for you.
Jamie. Yeah, she does.
Anti-violence, but I think about it often.
Put it on your calendar already for next year.
I sit way back in the corner and nobody can throw things at me. But part of that process, the length of time has a lot to do with how difficult your process is in getting the community on board. Like in Belmont, which is a very tight community and pretty well off, we held probably, they have different areas, we held probably 5 neighborhood meetings with somebody from the, do we have a selectman in here?
No.
Get one in here. Finance?
What about
These
housing?
meetings bring it
That being said,
forward.
the select board has been
Very supportive.
very supportive. They have indicated very clearly, and through our past iteration, have indicated very clearly
Yeah.
that they support.
That's critical. And
Typically, our town manager is actually the
Well, you're
secretary
here
for
too,
this
yeah.
group. So, yeah, we have good
if I only knew how to spell your last name, I'd be doing well. But,
Amy.
oh, been practicing. But this, one thing that we do, like I said, I lecture for 4 hours, you know, and I promise you won't get that. But, well, maybe
They're
not.
getting 1/4 of it.
But I can tell you that, that we're pretty good at what we do. There are things that we've done that people have not been overly happy with, but on a whole, all of our projects have turned out really well, and they've been, Wellesley one was really unique because I walked out 2 weeks after it opened. I was out in the patio and I was chatting with a couple of people sitting around having coffee. And I said, oh, you know, this is, you know, I've always liked Wellesley. You know, I had a partner in my life who was a Wellesley graduate from the college. And he said, oh yeah, but we're from Western. We really like this center a lot. So they had a relatively new center, but they said, this is just the best. So it's always nice to hear that, but there are times when if you go, there's a nice lady who was on our committee at the start, who I ran into her at Longmeadow, and she's in a wheelchair now. He said, wow, you know, Bernice, how do you like it? This is terrible. You know, I don't like it at all. I always like to say you can build a building and you can ask people on the street and 50% will love it, 50% will hate it, for whatever reason. I think she was grumbling because she thought, quite honestly, to be fair about Longmeadow, it's a little bit too fancy. We hang artwork. You know, we have these special walker system that allows you to hang pictures without putting holes in the walls. And we encourage that their art program, all these centers have really great art programs. If you go to Holyoke, the artists, I mean, they have a great teacher. They build beautiful artwork. Changes all the time. Often they'll bring in outside artists or photographers, or somebody who's traveled to Tibet and has their slideshow or put it up on the walls. In Longmeadow, one of the key players there really wanted expensive, beautiful artwork, and it is gorgeous. But that's all it's hanging up. I really feel the centers need to reflect the seniors. And if they paint, they're not painting by numbers, they paint really well. And they have art shows.
They were gorgeous.
And what's really fun is that every 3 months, they have an art opening. Wine, hors d'oeuvres. It's in the evening, people come and see the artwork. It's really fun. So it's part of the programming, if you will. And my only criticism, I like Longmeadow a lot. It's got great things about it. I'm not a big fan of the very expensive artwork, of which I contributed for one of them.
And then there are some design things that we have no choice on that other people.
Yeah, took out some of my coats. I'm sorry, we're running.
That concludes our official questions. Did anyone have any follow-ups that they wanted to ask? No? All right, any last?
Well, I'll say a couple things about the team. What's really important is that we're small. I used to have a 25-person office in Boston, and I was running Reagan. You know, I feed all the mouths and get all the things going. And we did a lot of retail work around the country. I was on planes 5 days a week, 4 days a week when my kids arrived. It's very demanding. When 2008 occurred, a lot of work shut down, especially for architects. I found jobs for all of my team, and in fact, one of them was running a major firm in Boston doing $100 million schools. So, but we became very tight. We've been together, I think, Dan's been here 10 years, we got 5. You've been here forever, 5 years. When you call us, that's who you get. When we design, Dan and I and Barbie, we even let her chime in. We're all part of that process. When you deal with us and we come to meetings, we write up the notes, we distribute them, we follow through with that work. And when you call, I don't take many vacations.
I've been with the company over 5 years. I don't think he's ever taken one. So.
I'm always there, you know, or I'm in my car and you have my cell phone. And by the way, we'll leave our cards. Our cell phones are on there.
We have an open office like we do
Yeah,
in designing our senior center.
We have no doors in our office. Like our senior centers, we try to keep, we only have doors where you need them, like the bathroom. But
cost saving.
Yeah. But
it wasn't.
And also we use our furniture. I'll mention a little bit about how important it is. Furnishings are extremely important in these centers. I always like to joke about Barry and Elliott, Jordan Furnishers. He used to sell on TV the double stuffers, you know. I always like, never ever use a 3-seat couch. Because what happens is we get older, our abs get a lot weaker, and it's really hard, if you don't, see, you got arms, okay? When you go to get up, how do I leverage myself up? Like that. Those arms, all our chairs in our multi-purpose rooms are all armed chairs, except for some that we use for sit and be fit, which you have to have armless because you're swinging your arms around. All of our arm chairs. Love seats and club chairs only. If you saw our pictures up there, I left that behind, you can look at it. They're all small, tight, and the seats are extremely firm because if you sink down, for older folks, it's really hard to get up. So our seating is that way. You'll see, we don't always have a lot of say in the furnishings. We don't like vinyl or plastic because as we get older, our core heat gets lost down through our butt and through our back. And older people, your metabolism drops and your heat gets lost on those chairs and it's really bad for you. So we like fabric. We use something called kryptonite, which is indestructible, but it's fabric. So if you have an incontinency issue or something, it can always be cleaned up and not a problem. We put slip things through. Everything's padded. So when you look at our projects, Long Meadow is a good example. We did all the furnishings. We leave the coloring and fabrics to the team. I get a headache when I think about paint colors. So you have an idea that if you look at our centers, they're very different. Like Wilbraham is blue because Paula really likes blue. So blue is a theme, all right? In Long Meadow, green was a theme, and I loved it because it's the same color as my house. I had to break the news to Mary Beth that you picked the color that I like. And then patterns are really important, but how you pick out the colors, as long as they're not too dark on the floor, because really dark squares look like holes, and an elderly person walking across the floor with a big dark tile will fall because they think they're stepping in a hole. So those are things we look at. Doors, we always have a different jamb color to the wall color because you walk into the jamb if you don't see that differential. So all that stuff, and our glass walls all have frosted bands on it.
And these are all things that a lot of
I've
people
walked
do
into
not
things that don't have them. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. You've talked about so many things that I don't know whether you've talked about this or not, but the energy efficiency of the building.
Very important. I mentioned it early on. Our ceilings are R60. We're big fans of closed cell foam, and where it's exposed, we have an intermittent coating like our attics. All of our mechanical, by the way, we spend no money on mechanical rooms. Our ceilings, if you look at our buildings, we all have gabled roofs and things. We have some, the project we did in Lexington, Kentucky is very modern. Most of New England is a little bit more conservative. So some of our buildings are, we don't have a problem with modernism. But I really like the idea of roof structure because we put these buildings require ERU units. Mass has a stretch energy code. ERU units are energy recovery units. They're about 5,000 pounds, and they look like a train. They're huge. We put them in the attic. All our mechanical spaces in the attic. I didn't show you any pictures of that, but if you're spending $700 a square foot on grade, I don't want to put a furnace in that. So energy-wise, very high efficiency in terms of. We also designed Long Meadow for PVAs. We haven't done it yet because we didn't get the funding yet. All of our public jobs now have charging stations for electric vehicles, and we use VRF for our variable units. They're basically heat pumps and backed up with gas.
And most of our buildings are able to, they're not LED certified, but they are able to be.
Yeah, we don't like spending your money on LEED certified. That's Leadership in Energy Environmental Design. They charge you. It'll cost you an extra 50 grand to do that. And then they're allowed to come back every 5 years, and if you changed anything without permission, they'll take away your certification. So we're not big on that.
But we build it to those standards.
Yeah. All our buildings are LEED certified. We did the very first ever senior center or adult center. We don't like the word senior anymore. We've been using active aging adult centers. But the NCOA doesn't like those anymore. The first one ever silver certified was Belmont, and that was all geothermal pump system. And if you got the water and you got the money, geothermal is great. It can be complicated. We like VRF. It makes your life a lot easier in town.
Wonderful.
Pardon?
You said you like VRF?
Yeah, VRFs they're a variable
frequency drive.
Yeah.
It's an RFD, isn't it?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I get that. I'm not good with the numbers. I'll let my engineers figure it out. But those are Those are variable,
VFD.
yeah, VFD, thanks. Variable frequency drive.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. If I remember that, it'll work. We do that. And it works out really well. Our last 5, we started that in Wellesley because that system became much more usable back about maybe 8-9 years ago. It's been around for a while, but it was not showing up a lot.
And we do a lot of other things, like a lot of our patios are built with recycled bricks. So it's,
They're not really bricks, they're made out of rubber tires.
right.
We call them bricks.
Right.
He's right.
And that's another way to make money. People pay to get their names on.
Yeah, I think, well, quite honestly, in Walpole, they raised $45,000 on the bricks alone.
But you just said that, I mean, earlier you said that.
Inconsistency.
No,
that's
outside.
That's the right title.
These things sit in, like Legos. They go into a grid system, lock into it, and they're soft. They're not hard like a brick or like a ceramic tile. They're very cool.
We use the term brick because they look like a standard red brick.
Yeah.
They give that appearance without
we
the
grade them with
danger.
a laser. They heat it because they burn the names in. We do a lot of work with our clients on fundraising too. One of my favorites was in Millbury. Judy O'Connor was the director there. That's a small town. We built a very small little center, about 6,000 square feet. The minimum size is about 6,500 square feet in order to get the basic programming into it. And she managed to squeeze $900 out of the bankrupt railroad that went by. So, I mean, you can get money almost everywhere.
That'd be creative.
Anyhow, we
you so
kept
much
you waiting
for-
late.
Yeah, thank you so much for
Thank you.
the presentation. Appreciate it.
We'll leave our cards behind just because I see Joel's is here and and his is pretty cheap. No, Joel, I've known Joel for a long time. He's a good guy, but.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Appreciate the time.
And I've enjoyed it. Can I take the tricky questions with me?
Yes, you can.
As long as nobody else has written on it.
Yeah, all right.
You might want to re-plug in your HP line.
Yeah, briefly, yeah.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Ma'am, I see you. Is it Ellen?
This was the slides. We got that one, yep.
We'll see.
Yeah, we want it.
Who's the contractor here?
Thanks for coming. Me.
How can I tell?
Does it look like I'm dusty, like I was working?
Yeah.
He doesn't call me a contractor because I don't bang everything.
Are you a contractor too?
I
I'm a
see.
project manager.
Oh, that's too bad.
Construction manager.
Oh, wait. I don't shake hands with guys like that.
You can tell by the calluses or lack thereof. Nice to see you, John.
Thank you, John. Good to see you.
Anti-social, -2
Yeah. What kind of project management do you do?
I run big commercial projects.
Yeah?
The complex of big buildings, like 1 million square feet or 6 buildings.
Oh, it's like,
So variable
like
frequency
Amazon
drives,
or
I put some of
something.
the first ones in that we ever put in,
oh.
on enormous pumps and all kinds of stuff.
Oh, that's,
To adjourn
we have
before anybody
we have
goes
a
anywhere.
fellow like you on our committee in
Oh, that's right, yeah.
in Wilbraham. We did a 10-story hotel in Back Bay, which was a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah, we
true.
lost the Zoom because of the
Yeah.
CPC need.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Rowdy,
Safe journey back.
what did I leave? Oh, I need the studies back.
There you go.
Just a brief break for the
Yes,
bathroom.
let's do a brief break and then we'll
And I
come back
want
for
you
our
to study
discussion. and-
that handout on MCOA, really study it hard.
Yeah, no, it's a good one. Yes, let's do like a 5-minute break for anyone who needs to use the facilities and then we'll.
My watch keeps saying, stand up, stand up.
Well, so do you want to adjourn? Do you want to adjourn or?
It usually adjourns for like 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and then he picks it up on the tape again.
Oh, we lost the Zoom a long time ago.
Oh,
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
So that's not necessary. So if we want to take a 5-minute break.
But we can't continue the conversation after we adjourn, is that the point?
no, let's just take a 5-minute break then. if you don't mind.
Just take a 5-minute break.
I brought these because the Friends of the Library are doing a fundraiser tomorrow night at Tiny's. It's called Dining for a Cause.
Oh, nice.
So between 5 and 8 p.m., anything you get or you take out or you eat there, a percentage of it will go to the Friends of the Library to do programs and buy museum passes.
Oh, great, okay. You said that's tomorrow night?
Tomorrow night.
As long as you're not confusing, yeah, Council on Aging, you're okay.
So it's getting late, but I just wanted to give, we had said we might do a preliminary discussion. I want to make sure everyone has a chance. Thank you again, Ellen, for putting out the document summarizing the reference checks. I want to make sure everyone has time to go home and reflect on what they've heard tonight, maybe double check against the presentations again, look at the references. We can talk about it in more detail at our next meeting, so we should probably do that sooner rather than later, because before it all falls out of my head, to speak for myself there. But any initial thoughts or things we want to say?
I sort of like that the last guy, Caitlin, he seemed to put a lot of detail. There's a lot of thought that went into some of the details that he brought up about, the stairs and, the falling aspect and just different things. And it seems like, he's got a good feel of that.
I absolutely agree. I mean, he just seemed to be the consummate authority on seniors, and the fact that he gives these 4-hour presentations every year, and he has these checklists. So, my sense is that other checklists come from his. I don't know that for sure, but it just seems so knowledgeable, and it was like a combination of technical skills and human interaction.
I think he takes a lot of pride in what he does.
Yeah.
Also, and I think I got from him, it's more of the, I don't know, he takes pride in it and really thinks about the building that he's building and who's it going to be used for really, it's more of the human touch. I think he really has a sincere human touch, and it's the little things like the rails that he talked about. Don't want to offend anybody. We hide that. The different things like the frosted glass, and just the half that he brought in a steel building. Talked about the pros and cons with the steel versus wood. So he's got a lot of good things floating around, and seen there's a lot of energy with his team.
And I thought that Bargman Hendry also had a lot of specificity in their recommendations regarding that. I think that both Bargman Hendry and Catlin had more specificity with how they would like to see the building designed. What it should be, what it should look like, what it should feel like. And for Abacus, that was somewhat missing. It was more the navigating the cultural zeitgeist for Abacus, as opposed to this is what our building, this is why our building designs are. So, and I thought that Bargman Hendry did a good job. I mean, the fact that he was here by himself and came with this and said that this is how we do things, there seemed something more purposeful coming from him. But I understand that there's a certain folksy feel to Catlin, that there was a certain likability factor there, that this is, but, so, I mean, the last two would be, the choice would be between those as opposed to the three.
Do you want to add or subtract to any of that? Yeah.
Well, I agree that I thought those were the two that were the best, and were more specific about what they would do, and they had opinions, and they were, and based on experience and all that, whether it be that we have a gym, but I did like their ideas, and they seem to be more geared into specifically to seniors and what worked for them. I think Catlin kicks it up a notch. You can't argue with the fact that he's obviously kind of
Guru?
yeah, I mean, that he knows a lot, and he teaches the other people. Now, there's people who say he feels he knows so much that, if you argue with him, mainly they say he's very opinionated.
Yeah.
And if you feel very strongly about something like the color of the building, you have to push back. But when you do, he accepts it, and he does well. So, I don't know, I think it's hard between those two, but I didn't expect to like Kaplan because I had heard things about him from people who had worked with him. But I was very, very impressed by him, actually.
What I like about him and his firm is that I feel a sense of relief that things I learned in school, I don't have to fight about here because he already knows all of them. Like, all of those things are concept of universal design that I took classes on, right? Like, he already knows all that. Like, that's the baseline that we're going to work from. But I agree with you. He's a strong personality. He's a very strong personality.
Sometimes you need that
And for me,
for the fight.
Yeah.
We gotta have.
right. And for me, Abacus and their staff is very warm. They don't have a lot of direction. That's at least my experience working with them. I fell sort of in the middle with BHNA, and it's a shame, and we'll have to have a more discussion about it, but I think Dave Grubb has opinions about BHNA that would be good, better for the other,
The project is.
What about this side of the table?
I thought they were all consummate politicians. They talked circles and never answered the direct questions. They kind of beat around the bush. They never really came out and said, this is this, or this is that. Well, we do this, or we can do that. Nobody ever really, they did the political thing. They're like, oh, no, and then here, look at this over here, but here's the real question over here.
But we don't have a definitive product to give them.
Right. Well, yeah, but when what are your two main factors? You ask a simple question. I want two. What are your two main factors? And they gave you a 20-minute dissertation, and they mentioned 18 different things. That doesn't tell me what are your two main. I'm one of those people. If I say I want two, I want you to give me two. I don't want you to give me six. I want two. But they all did that. Yeah. As a group, but I would say that I agree. The Catlin seemed to have more of an in-depth dissertation on what he was talking about, but he kind of rattled and talked around questions instead of answering direct questions.
I'm glad I'm going last.
I haven't gone.
I'll go again. I don't know how to quite frame this. I guess it would be, to me, it was just no context. I thought it was BHNA. That's the way I'll leave it at this point in time. His professionalism was what I'm looking for. His approach was unique. He came into the room as a one-person team and to prove to us that he could run the operation as the leader of the team. So he was direct in that when he came out. I thought that Catman had way too much time to go all over the place. And I would have a real problem sitting in a room with someone who goes all over the place like that. That was just way all over. He was all over the place in his answers. And I think the thing that's important right now for us to remember, though, is what is the scope of this project? I don't even think the scope of this project goes anywhere near to the tile on the floor or any of those questions of insulation or anything. That's the construction of the building. The scope of work of what we're doing now is involved with site selection and those professionals that come along with that. And I felt BHNA's, not only his proposal, but his quality of presentation stuck to that topic better. He didn't need to go off into ceiling tile and insulation. I think what happened with Catlin, in my own opinion, is that he was speaking to, as though he spoke to a group of people who knew nothing about buildings. So he's just going off and off on all these different topics. But in essence, we're all going to get professional architectural services. They're all going to give us energy efficiency. We're a green community, so we're 20% above the code. So we as a committee already are going to be in a position to understand what construction's all about. When he didn't know what a variable frequency drive was, that bothered me, because he was using it in his presentation. He was rattling and rattling about different stuff. So I like the consistency of BH&A, that's my own opinion. I like his professional approach. I like the whole presentation, and I want to stick with the scope that we're doing right now. I know later on the scope expands, but don't we need to check exactly what this particular piece is looking for, versus tiling the floor, or edging on a stair? I mean, I know all that stuff.
Maybe you do, but I don't.
We're gonna know it though.
No,
When we go through discussion.
I built the school, so I learned a lot up there.
Oh, you will. You will learn.
Yeah.
To add to or to support your point, I also thought it was interesting that Catlin brought his whole team and he didn't let them talk.
I don't know.
Right. I mean, just as putting different points out there to
I think the
balance.
thing that's important is to have a group of community people with different ideas, and that's good. So we're gonna figure that out somewhere along the
To
line.
me, it seems strange that BH&A was only one person.
Yep.
You thought it was strange?
Yep.
Oh, I thought it was.
just perfect.
I
So
thought it
that's
was
the way it's
impressive.
different. People think differently.
I know, it's really fun.
Your initial
Quick
reflections.
notes, I just wrote, all three can do it, and I think we just gotta think what's best for the committee / the town, and kind of like Ken said at this time. I made notes, BH&A, he's kind of nuts and bolts the way he's thinking about doing it, in the way with those decision matrices, with all the information. Catlin, he would easily drive the bus for us, like we said, he would be probably hard to fight with on certain things, which could be what we need. And I think with Abacus, they'd kind of let you drive the bus. That was kind of more open. What's the town want here? And I think what do we need is kind of what we got to ask. But I think, Ken, you're right. I got to kind of go back and look. What is the exact scope we're at right now? We're hiring an architect we were on a task order basis as we sort of approach sites, and what are we going to do? It wasn't like, hey, we're doing a feasibility study. I mean, that could be a scope of what we're doing. Essentially, we're doing a mini one, right, when we're doing these sites. So, and then later on in the process is going to come when we have to go out for designer selection law hiring, when we do the full-blown design of the project. So I think we got some things to think about.
I think we have a tough task because they're all qualified. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
All six were qualified, to do it. So it becomes almost a question of personal likes and dislikes to some extent, which is hard to say in a public venue, but sometimes it gets down to, things that are personal.
I think maybe what it'll come down to is once we start looking at what they're giving us for a cost estimate, if Caitlin is $100,000 more than BHA, or BHA is $100,000 more than Caitlin.
Right.
When you get
Caitlin said something about 700 a square foot, and one of the others was 1,000.
But those are construction costs.
That's, the first gentleman he's off the wall.
Well, and they all include different things. Like the $1,000 a square foot is starting from having the idea of a building all the way through to the construction. He was
right.
Because I had pushed back with him
Construction
about that
costs
before.
versus the total.
It's the total thing versus someone might be saying 700 and they're talking about the construction and parsing off all this pre-work as pre-work. So we have to make sure they're comparing.
Did you see the proposals that included estimates for so their hourly rates are pretty much the same. Again, I'm like a salesman now myself, so I was intrigued by the fact that BH&A had listed all those subcontractors in his original thought process that we were going to potentially a subconsultant, subcontractor combination, and tried to put an allowance towards each of them. But interestingly enough, they came out to pretty much exactly the same amount. It's like $125,000 we're talking about for this part of the project, for almost any of them. So I don't think might not enter into it. Because
I thought there was a lot of similarities between BH&A and Catlin in terms of their data matrix and what they looked at and how they compared it and how they came up with the best thing. There were a lot of similarities there.
Yeah.
And which it sounded like a great plan of how to do it.
And I was and I was thinking, who would sell better in front of the town? That is, if we were to ask either Mr. Catlin or Mr. Joel Bargman to get up alone and tell us, you know, or explain to the town why X, Y, or Z is better, or which would be able to pull that together and kind of go to the town in a more kind of coherent way and come up with, and I mean, based on tonight, and again, I'm not closing my mind on this by any stretch, because I want to go back and look at everything. But based on tonight, it would just seem that Mr. Bargman would be better at doing that, at going to the town and kind of.
Well, and
I feel
that
the
comes back.
opposite.
But that comes back to Ken's
He's too
statement.
cold. It's cold.
I thought he started, I thought he started out a little cold, but I thought.
But he did warm up at the end because he was excited to show us more of his presentation.
Yeah, no,
He wanted to rush through, you know, at the beginning, and that was that, is that, you know, you stand up at town meeting floor, they gotta shut you right off if you get like that.
There was another thing that happened, and I don't know if we drew names for the location of the interviews.
But he took
Catlin had the advantage to come in and just keep going.
Yeah.
And going and going.
I felt that
He
way.
had closer to an hour rather than
He
45
took
minutes.
easy over an hour, easy over an hour.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and the second gentleman came in,
We didn't
had to come
start
in a
on
little
time
late,
either.
because it was the
Yeah.
first one late, so that whole process was, you know, was what it is. You know,
Right.
it is.
No, I was watching the clock with when they started, and they each got, the first two each had about an extra 5 to 7 minutes, and then Catlin got about 15.
I do want to make
extra
just
minutes.
one quick comment. This has nothing to do with the architects, that they were all on one thing that I learned tonight.
But
2 stories.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, we learned, we came out of nothing tonight, we came out with 2 stories. I mean, that was a big feature. I want every single one of them, and that was my question.
I want to reflect on that a little bit. I mean, that kind of, I mean, I had gone into this, and throughout this entire process have been thinking that 1 story is preferable for any number of reasons, and I was, you know, I think that this causes me to think again about the site and what the building will look like and how the building will be used in a way that I didn't anticipate doing.
Yeah.
And I think when we first started talking about this, like coming back to 2.5 years ago when I started, we were talking about an 8 to 10,000 square foot building. In which case I was very strongly in favor of a 1-story building. We have talked, modified, gone the community center route. We've talked about more active fitness. There was no fitness center at all, no fitness facility at all located in the first one that the Abacus did for the town. So I'm more open to the 2-story model. But when I think about that, you do really have to think about staffing, because if you can't collaborate with your staff, it really interrupts productivity, and so it's got to be carefully, thoughtfully laid out, because you do need staff upstairs. So that's just a consideration.
Adding more staff and, yeah.
I mean, we'll have to have more staff in the new building anyway, but
No, but it did open up some possibilities that I hadn't really.
Yeah, it was obvious that they all 3 liked
But they made a lot more sense. It's in, you know, instead of that, you're heating that much compared to that much, it makes sense.
Then I think of myself at home, even climbing, you know, going up to, I mean, I do it, and I can do it, but it's, geez, I have to go upstairs
Yeah,
again.
but it's not for you. They want you to.
I will say,
And I want to sit here with.
You can run.
I want to sit here with the remote, thank you very much.
but Katie and I went to North Andover, right when it opened.
short risers make a
Their
difference.
steps, I was so impressed, because as he
Yeah,
said,
so
it's
they're
only
only 6
6
inch.
inches.
6 inches.
They are
and
so easy to walk up. It's amazing.
Imagine if like the steps at Fenway Park were just not as deep. Like that's the way it is. It's
They want them like a
they're
foot deep
very.
and 6
But
inches.
there's also
Yeah.
a huge elevator right next to the stairs.
The key is
almost
to not
like
make
double.
it too big so that it actually is
No, that's-
inconvenient to take
Gonna
the
open up
elevator.
some
Yeah.
Interesting
But,
conversation.
yeah, I was very surprised.
The size of the elevator is going to be determined by well, no, by ADA. It's going to be
Yeah, it's gonna
what size wheelchair can you fit, because it's going to be able to get in there and turn around and all
We
that.
just did ours over at Neshoba Tech.
Do we want to schedule? I need to get back.
Yeah,
A lot
that's.
of money.
And I don't want to get dug in too much.
Right, no, agreed.
We had to redo the whole thing. It was time to revamp the elevator.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it cost
Well, now it's changed.
huge
They have a
money.
life. They have a life.
It's almost 9 o'clock. I'm hungry. When can we meet again?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow, let's do it.
Sorry, contract negotiations all week.
So we unfortunately don't have,
During Holy Week? Ugh. Blasphemy.
have the town
Those
calendar
teachers.
pulled up now.
Oh, those guys.
But-
Strikers?
What do you think? Oh, you have it.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
awesome.
April.
Okay, so we really,
Oh, there's nothing on Fridays.
oh, okay, all right, yeah,
Why is it so
yeah.
skinny?
So Wednesday, the 3rd is available. That's a week from now. Thursday, the 4th.
And when you say Wednesday the 3rd, what times? Or
The-
5, 6, 7?
There's nothing on the
There's
town
nothing on
calendar.
on the town calendar those nights. Is that too quickly next week?
No.
Or,
No, I mean, sooner the better, I think.
Should we do 6, because
I think 6
isn't
is
that
easier
better
for Dave. Yeah.
and for you at one
Chris?
time?
Hopefully, yeah, because I have softballs. Hopefully softball will be over by then.
Okay.
Sorry, I got
don't-
my hat into that now, so what I can do about that.
Okay, yeah.
Assistant.
And because you're on vacation.
Girls Maynard.
Good for you. Good for you. Yeah, so Dan won't be able to be here, but.
Yeah,
Maybe
And
you
if
could
you
write
have-
up your
Yeah.
suggestions.
if you'd like, I could, put something
Put
together,
something
what I'm
together.
thinking.
Yeah.
Quick little memo.
Yeah.
Be great.
Do we want to be in a position next week to
Well, the
take an
sooner,
award?
I mean,
the
I
sooner we
think
get it
we
done.
can, like they said, we can take this at whatever pace we want to.
Do we
So,
wanna- Now I'm thinking going to see some of the buildings.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. Is it worth
I mean,
trying to get?
not a quorum, just happen to be driving by.
I mean, you can do that either way. You can schedule site visits as a quorumed event, an official event, or you can go as subcommittees. I mean, we've both seen North Andover.
Right.
I've seen Andover and Lexington, and you've seen Andover.
Uh-huh. But I mean, I think if there are particular properties, is that an important piece of the decision?
Well, it would be good to, see a BH&A property and,
Yeah.
a CAM property.
One thing too is, April 12th are when our RFPs are due, the private property RFPs, to keep in mind if you want to schedule anything around that.
Okay.
Something else to talk about at a meeting. Those had to get pushed, we tried to get them earlier, but the
Yeah.
So on April,
30B requires that.
I'm sorry, April 12th is the final date for,
Due date for the private property RFPs, or proposals, I guess.
have we had any come back yet?
That's 3 weeks from,
yeah.
yeah.
And then what would it take? And so then we will look at whatever comes in and consider whether or not we want to pursue it.
That's just, I just want to mention
Sure.
that. So we know
Do
as
we
we're
want to
planning
combine,
this.
do we want to combine those two functions into one meeting?
Well, so that's the question. Then you're gonna be looking at more like 1, 2, 3, 4, into the 4th week. That would be 4 weeks from now.
Yeah.
I mean,
So do we want to meet on the 3rd or the 10th? I mean, I can do either.
Let's try to do it sooner rather
Third?
than later. Maybe.
so is the 3rd fast enough for people who want to see a BH&A building to see I mean, I don't,
Should we say that if people are going to look at buildings, they should look at, are people feeling that Abacus is kind of fallen off the thing, or, and
For me, yes.
Yes.
for me it has, yeah.
yeah, that looks
So
like
maybe we could
without a vote, that looks like.
focus on BH&A and Catlin, and try to look at one of each of their.
I'm wondering if North Andover would be a good choice for Catlin because it's they just opened this fall. So it's a recent project of his. She
It's
doesn't
nearby.
love him,
Yeah.
so it's the director doesn't love him, so it's a well-rounded look. It's not that far away.
Yeah.
And it's 2-story on a small lot. And then, I
mean, that 2-story thing has really thrown me for a loop. Now I'm thinking 2 stories on a big lot.
Yeah, to get the parking. The other thing that happened tonight, which is very interesting,
to get
is
the
the parking
outdoor
discussion went all
access
the
and-
way from 35 cars to 100.
right, yeah.
Which is fascinating. And the advocates pretty much stood their ground when they were telling us how many parking spaces we needed and how much land we needed. So we got a lot of things to figure out.
Yeah. So if we did the 3rd, we would be calling some places tomorrow, trying to figure out if we could, come on the 1st or 2nd.
Do we have to visit as a group, or can we just go?
Well, I mean, I think you're going to want to have a pocket of 3 or 4 people go, rather than asking the director to give you a tour to a bunch of different people. You know what I'm saying?
Just bug the director once.
Yeah.
All right.
So, I mean, and I think it would, depending on how many people are
But then it
available to
needs
do
be-
it.
I mean, the thing is, if it results in a quorum, we have to have it posted and all the rest of it.
That's not a big deal. That's okay.
But that's 2 days ahead, and
Right. Well, what I'd be saying, what I was thinking is, if we want to do that, I would suggest that I could call tomorrow, for example, and see if we could get an appointment for one on the 29th and one on the 1st. Get them posted.
The 29th is Good Friday.
Okay, maybe the 1st and the 2nd, but right up to the 3rd or the 4th.
But do you really have to have it, even if you have a quorum, if we're not really discussing anything or taking any votes, does it really still have to be posted?
In my view,
Yeah, to post it as a meeting.
You have to post it.
if there's a quorum, but if
And-
there's not,
Right, and that's the thing, but it doesn't take that long for me to come up with an agenda that just says site visit of this property, and I submit it. It's 20 minutes worth of work for me. It's not that big of a deal.
and if we don't have a quorum, that's fine.
Yeah, and if you don't have it, that's fine too.
Okay, so what do we, what's a quorum for the, what are we, 9, 7 of us? So 5 would be a quorum, so I don't think we'll get a quorum.
Well, there's 9 of us, right?
Yeah. Right, so if
Yeah.
only 4 people go, then it's not a quorum, so you don't really have to.
Right, and I'd perfectly fine saying, since I've been to North Andover, I don't have to go. You can remove the 2 of us out of the quorum. I would love to see a BH&A one though, so.
There's one in Newton. It's the Newton Center for Active Learning, Living, which is pretty close.
oh, that was the one that was.
That was one that was squeezed on
really
the site.
tight. They
Yeah.
squeezed it into
Oh, okay.
I'm
no
not sure I
parking.
see anything like what we have here and there,
Well, but I mean, yeah.
the land and so forth, but certainly not gonna get it on the golf course like Bill Brand.
No. So the question I think is,
said
do
early.
we want to meet on the 3rd or 4th? And then we can, which of those 2 days do you want? And then we can walk back trying to get the site visit from there. Anyone care? Wednesday versus Thursday?
Wednesday's
I
fine with me.
prefer the 3rd, but that's
Yeah,
just me.
Wednesday's better.
The 3rd is Wednesday?
Yeah,
Yeah.
It doesn't bother me, I'm free.
yeah, I am too.
Okay, so
Talk to
if
the important
3rd is the
people. Yeah,
preference,
things
okay,
to
so let's have our next meeting is April 3rd at 6 PM. And then we'll try and get a site visit early, like 1st, 2nd, or 3rd
Yep.
of that. And, those site visits will have to be during the day. Because those facilities are, I mean, Andover's not open at night, North Andover. I don't know about the other one. So that might actually limit us to lower than quorum anyway, right?
Chris, do you feel like,
I can't go.
no, you can't do
Yeah.
it, but how important is it to you to do a site visit?
There's enough knowledge around this table that would certainly give good feedback.
I have to be here so that I can pick up my kid from school, so.
I'm just curious, I mean,
I can take pictures
I'm
and
curious, yeah.
send them out too. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel like I have to go back to North Andover. But I would like to see a Bardman, Hendry, and
How was the North Andover building?
it's a nice building.
I liked it. I mean, there were things I would do differently about it, but I
Different
did.
clientele up there also. There's a
It
lot of money.
is.
Well, it's a bigger town.
Yeah.
It's a bigger town.
Bigger
You know,
need.
the only place, like, for example, I see what he's saying as far as like the active, noisy hub and then the conversation area. What I didn't like about that is you walked into a wall with the desks, the staff desks right next to it. It felt very much like coming into a doctor's office right there. What I would say if we were to choose them would be like, okay, I hear what you're saying, but within the sight line has to be that fireplace. I want to see the fireplace and the chairs and the lounges
Felt like you were
within
going
the sight
into
line.
a nursing home to a certain extent. You know how
It
you
was-
walk in and there's the desk and all, and I was going.
But again,
wow.
that director, that was North Andover, that was Catlin's property.
I don't have
But-
to go there. Suppose that. He just told us that that's not the way they make them. He just
Well,
said everything's
yeah,
open. I
but
just
then
wrote
the
it
rest
down.
of it is good, but.
Yeah, so that one opens right in, you walk in right into the staff area. And when you turn down the hallway, then you have that big open space. But that particular building is all white and gray, or white and, it was very white in there. And that particular director.
Institutionalized.
But actually,
You know
when
how
you
that
when you
goes.
actually when you actually look at it, though, it makes sense to me because the director is a sophisticated older woman who like rocks a white pantsuit.
Yeah.
Not to be too informal about it, but like it's
Well,
sleek.
I didn't say it.
You can see. No, what I'm saying is like you can see from her perspective, it was sleek and sophisticated, but also it was a little sterile. Like I would go for warmer colors. Am I being recorded right now?
Yes, you are.
Am I? Okay. So
Came in after it had been designed and stuff and started
Right.
making changes. They even mentioned, you remember when they wanted to
Right.
make all the changes?
yeah.
So there was some clashing there. But it's very nice, you know, and there's where you can look down over what everybody's doing and, you know, there's
Never
a
look
lot
down
of-
on
Is that
anybody.
near the country? Is that the one that's near the country club that they?
No, that was Wilbraham. The golf course, you mean?
Yeah.
I think that was Wilbraham.
But they have an outdoor space, they have a, you
Home of
know,
Friendlies.
there's a lot to it.
I thought all three of them talked about
Why doesn't
the same
Pepsi
kinds of things.
pony up here? Take enough of our water.
We looked at it.
What did they say?
All right.
In the committee, one of the, didn't we try to get a hold, we asked Dan to call him, actually. I think Pepsi, did we ask you to call the other gentleman who now built houses and whatnot?
About, what was it?
Pepsi land. They have a
Oh.
chunk of land, but they have a water.
They have a
protection
well,
situation.
yeah.
Yeah, right off of Snake Hill.
Yeah, they have a
That's
big goose
Pepsi.
sack.
Yeah, they have a well back there with a 400-foot radius, and there's wetlands. I think I
Yeah.
looked at that.
There's a guy that checks something. You can see one of the little things on the road from Snake Hill. They go and check every
Yeah.
once in a
Oh,
while.
yeah.
Testing.
Well, is this
Our
North
state.
Andover, is this the most recent Catlin thing, or?
He's got one that's under construction right now, but this is the most
Yeah,
recent.
Wilbraham. I think
Wilbraham had their
Wilbraham
punch list and
had a,
stuff.
just a soft opening in March, and they're doing their punch list.
You know, the other thing, just about taking that site visit, I don't have to take a site visit, this is my own personal issue, but it's going to be hard for us to go into a site, like what you just mentioned at North Andover, what if that committee said, that's what we want? We want that station at the front. That may not be what we want, but we might find that to be a negative, so it doesn't really help us to see it there.
Right.
So we don't know what all these other committees, how they resolve the design with their architect.
Right, well, that's the thing, you have to go into it with that point of view. You
She
can't go
wanted
into
a
it saying he
service center
didn't
right
say
when you
or do
walked
what
in
he
the
said
door.
he
It might
was
have been a
going to do. Right.
security issue. Maybe
Yeah.
somebody broke into the other one and they want
Right.
to make sure nobody got by that front
It's,
area.
it's like when you walk into a house and you want to buy it, you can't focus on whether the walls are painted blue. You have to figure out if you like all the other things about it, because the blue wall is changeable. So we can design, we can work, we'll have our own criteria.
With your own criteria.
Yeah, yeah. So,
But I mean, the
all
good
right.
news is I think both of them are very good.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
And I think we get a good design from either one, it's just a
Should we get a
question
good
of.
design?
So,
All right, it is 9 o'clock on the dot. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
We adjourn.
Second.
All right.
Thanks, everyone, for coming.
Aye.